first 2020 school board meeting for Lynchburg City Schools. And board, we have the agenda before us on tonight. And I do want to say to each of us a happy new month, December the 1st. This is our last month of the year. Next time will be Happy New Year. And so with that in mind, we are mindful of item B1, the approval of the agenda. And as our norms and protocols suggest, the appropriate featuring of the agenda has been before us. And I would love for a motion to approve the agenda as presented at this time.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Been moved by Dr. Carter, seconded by Ms. Morrison, that we would approve the agenda for our December the 1st meeting. Are there any further questions or discussions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And could we now stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I also would further acknowledge, as we now move to C1, we do want to thank the board for your ongoing cooperation as we move through this pandemic. And we are asking today, to the best of our ability, that each of us would keep our mask on, even when you are making effort to communicate. Our staff has put in the proper effort to make sure that volume is on your mic. And at the end of the meeting, you're going to get a device, maybe Dr. Edwards or someone can explain it further, that you would put underneath of your mask that can help you, if that will help you going forward. But we would please ask each board member to adhere yourself to that to the best of your ability. C1, we will now move to public comments. And in accordance with policy, persons desiring to address the school board should submit an advanced request in writing to the superintendent not later than 12 noon on Wednesday, preceding the regular board meeting, or by signing the public comment form, which shall be available to the public 15 minutes before the meeting starts. Each person requesting to speak shall identify the subject he or she wants to address, and if he or she represents a group, she must or he must identify the group. Due to limited seating, members of the public are encouraged to sign up in advance to speak during public comments. Per school board policy, the board will allow up to 30 minutes for public comments. Individuals will be invited to speak in the order in which they have signed up. And allow me to add that as you are before us today, that you will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote business ventures, and should not use profanity or vulgar language or gestures, make comments about a public official or employee that are not related to his or her official duties, engage in behaviors that are disruptive to the meeting or intimidates others, or address the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, role, and or responsibilities of the school board. There's a 30-minute time limit on this segment. And as our board members are trying to the best of our ability to adhere to face coverings, we would ask our persons prepared to share with us today to do the same to the best of your ability. We're asking that to be done during this time. We do have two persons who have signed up for public comments. The first one being Andrew Glover, who wants to talk about Phase 4, representing conservative parents of Lynchburg. Mr. Glover?
Good evening, Lynchburg City School Board. My name is Andrew Glover. I'm an LCS parent and a representative of the Conservative Parents of Lynchburg, a group of over 180 Lynchburg families, teachers, and LCS staff members. I'm here once again to beseech you to reopen schools for those parents who wish to send their kids back to face-to-face learning on a full-time basis. This school shutdown and remote learning environment is insufficient for many families and causing irreparable harm for our children. And this is a textbook case of the solution being far worse than the original problem. Since LCS began tracking COVID-19 cases in September, the administration has only reported 32 cases. 32 cases of COVID-19 out of a student population of 7,500 students and over 1,000 employees, which is an infection rate of 1/3 of 1%. We are penalizing Lynchburg families because of a fraction of a percentage of case counts. While well-off families can choose to send their kids to private school, and many of the county schools offer a full-time face-to-face schedule for their families, LCS city students are failing. Student engagement is at an all-time low, while student depression and anxiety is at an all-time high. Drug use is up and grades are down. Your 2020-2021 budget is flush with $10.2 million in excess funding, while parents are having to quit their jobs and reduce their hours to do the job that we pay our taxes for. In fact, in just about every manageable manner, we have failed our kids. Please do not continue on this path of destruction. Please do not let our children become a lost generation. It is not too late to reopen schools for a full-time face-to-face schedule and attempt to reverse the course that we set back in August. 2 weeks ago at the work session, a board member requested that the standing agenda for tonight's Return to Learn plan include an update on the progress made towards face-to-face 4, which is a full-time return for any student who has a parent willing to send them. When you hear the presentation tonight, in a few minutes, we implore you to listen to the majority of LCS parents who have indicated that they want their kids in a school for face-to-face learning. Press for details for this plan and firm commitments. Set definable and reachable milestones that will be used to determine when Phase 4 will begin. And diligently work towards that goal rather than resigning to the fact that it's an unreachable attainment. We tell our students that the best things come from hard work. So please, do the hard work and reopen the school buildings. On one other note, several of our group members have multiple kids. Unfortunately, those kids ended up in different school cohorts, and so far those parents have been unsuccessful in working with the schools to get their families in the same cohort. We'd like to ask that the administration direct schools to prioritize same family cohorts so that parents aren't further stretched by unnecessary scheduling challenges. As a part of this prioritization, we would ask to be provided a contact where parents can escalate family cohort consolidation concerns in the event that school staff are unable to help them. We basically have families with kids in A and B, and they're having to do an awful lot of running around, and we're just asking that be helped out. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Glover. Thank you. At this time, we will now have Carl Luce, who is wanting to share with us pay metrics from the Lynchburg Education Association. Mr. Luce?
All right, good evening to each of you, and as always, thank you for your service to the Lynchburg community, especially during these trying times. My name is Carl Luce, and as president of Lynchburg Education Association, it is my duty to come forward and speak with you on two key issues. The first is the pandemic. Dr. Nilles asked at the August 4th school board meeting about what metrics you would use to have students and staff back in the building. This question has yet to be answered. We have community members who like to come in here and talk about the World Health Organization's guidelines for spacing between students. So then, let's talk about the World Health Organization's guidelines for positivity rates. The WHO says that positivity rates should be below 5% for a community for a minimum of 14 days before schools even consider reopening. Only 7 states meet these requirements, and we all know that Virginia isn't one of them. With a positivity rate of nearly 11% last week and 9.1% as of today, we know that the positivity rate is not a metric for LCS, so let's move on. We've heard that children don't get COVID. We know that's not true. We've gone from an almost zero COVID rate per 100,000 people for kids in April, when schools were closed, to a rate of over 1,500 per 100,000 today. Children made up less than 2% of cases in April, and today make up almost 12% of cases. So the argument then becomes, yeah, but in LCS, well, let's look at those numbers. From the last numbers we have available, we saw that the number of positive cases doubled from November 20th to November 24th. And we hadn't even seen the fallout from Thanksgiving yet, but you can bet there will be another spike. And what does the reality of these numbers look like? Sure, a 3 or a 6 doesn't look bad on a chart, but that's not the impact. We had 3 staff members test positive at one secondary school, for example, but the reality is that we had a total of 7 staff members out and more than 30 students as a result of exposure. We had 2 staff members test positive at another secondary school, but the reality was we had an entire floor of teachers out as a result of exposure. You can look at the data and say we had currently 1 bus driver test positive. But the reality of that is we now have multiple drivers out, as well as office staff, and more importantly, we had this driver in the ICU fighting for his life, and now he's still in the hospital. So let's talk about the reason we shut down schools back in March: to flatten the curve, to reduce the strain on our medical facilities. At Lynchburg General, which is a 5-story building, we've already got 2 floors dedicated to COVID response, and they're preparing to open a 3rd. I'd say we're straining our medical facilities. So what we want is a defined set of metrics. What are the rules to this game of Russian roulette we're playing? Your staff, your students, your parents, your community deserve to know. The second topic I need to discuss with you is pay schedules. We worked with this board and this division for years to develop a pay schedule that, while far short what it should be, was a big step in the right direction for all of us. Then the pandemic hit, and as is always the case, the first thing cut was staff salaries. Now we know the hit to the state and local finances wasn't as much as we feared. The pain, while real, wasn't as bad as it might have been. And if pay was the first thing cut, it should be the first thing restored. Your staff has been working through a pandemic. They haven't missed a beat. They've completely redone how things have been done for years, and they did it at the drop of a hat. I understand that LCS is waiting for data from the state. They need the ADM before they know what's what in the world of finance for the foreseeable future. But this board can commit tonight to making restoring the pay schedules by February a top priority. To do less would cause a backlog and the need for schedules to be completely redone. To do less would be to ignore the hard work and sacrifices made by your staff each and every day. To do less might very well drive overstressed and overworked staff out of the division. These 2 items are paramount to make Lynchburg City Schools move forward successfully in the future. The vaccines are almost here. This pandemic will pass. Once that happens, we will need experienced and dedicated staff here to handle the aftermath. Herbert Hoover often gets the bulk of the blame for the Great Depression, even though he had only been president for a few months when the markets crashed. The reason for that isn't really because he was in charge when the country fell into that crisis. The reason is because of how he reacted once it did. How will you react? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Luce. We appreciate your comments tonight. As we leave this section, we are thankful for those who share with us personally tonight. We do want to encourage the public to know that we are so appreciative of your remarks. Please continue to come and do that, and we would want you to do that in the best way possible during this pandemic through email or telephone messages. And so please govern yourselves accordingly. We will now move into item D1, where October 2020 financial report. Dr. Edwards, if you would.
Sure, and I'm going to invite Ms. Lakonich in to give our October fiscal report.
Good evening. Tonight we are presenting the financial reports for October through October 31st, 2020. These were presented at the Finance Committee meeting back on November 24th, I believe, and the adopted budget remains as what the initial budget was of $98,108,191. This will be the last month that remains the same, because in November you will see the prior year POs have come over, and that is $1.2 million that will be added to this budget, as well as the fund balance return from the city of the $2.5 million. So this will be the next time you will see that there will be an adjusted budget in that area. Our revenues received to date, we received 24.91%. We have attached the detailed report of the revenue. If you look, our SOQ funding from the state is in line with what is anticipated. We have received from the state 26.86% of our revenue, and again, that's in line with what we received last year. We were at 26.67%, so we are on target with our revenue. Our sales tax is still holding strong. This report we're showing that through October we're at 21% of our budget, and that is historically where we are at this time of the year. So we are that is remaining what we anticipate. Some areas that we are monitoring, and these are COVID related, is you will see that the tuition adult still does not have any revenue, our bus rental, as well as our facility rentals. And we had cut the budget to those when we were doing this budget process, knowing that there would be some impact on COVID, and we are seeing that, and we will continue to monitor that. But those three lines themselves total $300,000. Our expenditures to date, we are at 26.15%, and our expenditures, including encumbrances, are 85.16%. And we have provided detailed expenditure reports, and if you have any questions.
All right, board, this is information around fiscal responsibility. Is there any discussion? Dr. Brennan.
Mr. LaConch, thanks so much for your report and for your comment about the sales tax. That certainly is encouraging that so far we're on track. I have a couple of just very simple clarification questions. Under the revenue, what is item tuition day schools and item tuition FM COCY, and how do they relate as far as, looks like one for this year we kept the budget about the same, for the other one we decreased it?
Okay, so the tuition day school is your non-resident tuition. We did not decrease that. That's the non-resident students that their parents pay tuition for their students to attend Lynchburg City Schools. And the other is tuition from other county or city. And that is a big decrease from last year, because you'll remember that we removed the non-center base for LAUREL. So that's where if you're comparing it to last year's budget, you'll see a large decrease. The amount that's still in there, again, because the LAUREL non-center base tuition does not exist for this year, it is actually tuition for Project Search, and that is a program for students with significant disabilities where they can do classroom, and they also do internship. And we partner with Central Health, and our students are at Lynchburg General, and it's limited in the number of students, but we do share some slots with Campbell County, and they pay us for our portion for their students that attend.
Thank you.
Dr. Gupta.
Thank you, Mr. LaConch, for sharing this information. I see there's almost $650,000 increase in sales tax receipts. Is it an anomaly, or is it just a yearly trend because we are near holidays?
Well, we are actually going through November. If you go back at the Finance Committee meeting, we gave a presentation of a 4-year trend history of sales tax, and we are in line with being through November 34%. I do want to point out that is 34% of your original budget, and if you recall, the state did come back and reduce the budget to be less, and we're actually trending at the higher. So we're definitely watching that, and it looks positive at this point.
So year to year, there's a $650,000 increase.
Yes.
So did we account that while developing the budget, or is it sort of a surprise positive cash flow?
Well, I mean, your sales tax is never guaranteed, but they will give you projections in that calc tool that we share, and the projection that we built this budget on was at $12 million, and that was reduced back down when they had the special session. Again, we are still trending higher, and we will just continue to monitor it, but it does look like if that trend continues, that we would have extra.
One more, and then,
Please.
would you please share sometime, maybe next board meeting, where do we stand on CARES spend? Because many of that has a deadline of December 31st.
Yes.
So where do we stand as LCS in terms of the spend and how much percentage is used and where?
I can give you an update now, or I can wait for the next board meeting,
It's
whichever
up to you.
prefer. So with the city cares, we have encumbered and spent everything. We have, I think it's 4 different orders that we're just waiting for it to be received. But everything's been trued up with the city on that, so we're just waiting for those 4 orders. We have encumbered everything except for around $50,000 for the CRF funds. That does expire in December as well. So everything except for that amount, and between IT and maintenance, they're going to take care of that amount. We are on target to spend those down.
All right, Ms. Morrison?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the money that came to LCS, we don't have to spend CARES money by December. We have a longer period.
That's correct.
We're holding on to it for that reason.
Correct. We had different pots, so that we had the portion from the city, their city cares, and we were asked to have all that spent by the end of December. And so that was priority. Then we received the CRF funds, and we had less than 2 months to spend that money. And that's been our second priority. You have the gears, and that was a competitive grant. And so it is more restrictive in what you can spend it on because it was an application and it was a smaller amount. And then we still have the original LCS cares, which we have 2 years to spend that, and we were holding that back to look and see about the ADM, if it's hold harmless. And then, we do have, once these cares funds, we spend those and it's spent down, if we are still going through this pandemic, if there's not additional funds, we will probably have to be tapping into those.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to speak that has not spoken yet on this matter? Dr. Brennan?
Yes, Ms. Guy, thanks so much for your patience with taking our questions. 2 other ones, additional ones. One is, last year we had a large amount of encumbrances, $850,000, and so far this year that's a 0 number. And I know you said that at some point that was going to catch up. What's your anticipation for that? And the other question is, you've mentioned about how bus rentals and facility rentals have gone down. Are there any other larger areas that have been affected as far as our expenses with the COVID, with the return to learn plan and how we're doing education now?
All right, so for your first question, where you had, it was 800 and some thousand, that was prior year POs. That's what I was referencing, that next month, and when you get the November report, you will see that 1.2 million. If you look at the expenditure report right now, it looks like in your bus purchases that you're over budget, and that was actually the POs that were open. They had placed the orders before COVID. COVID had delayed the buses being delivered, so they were still outstanding at year end. We did since get the buses, and we've paid that bill, so it looks like it's over budget, but really the budget was from the prior year, and it just hasn't rolled over. So in November, you will see that. So that 800,000 you will see, and this year, like 1.2 million. Your second question about expenditures, I mean, COVID has impacted us as far as PPE, disinfectant, the distance learning with all the technology, and we've been very fortunate to have the CARES money to cover those extra expenditures. Once those funds are gone, if there's not additional ones, we're going to have to be looking at how we're going to cover those in our budget. And while we do see some savings, such as fuel, it's different than the savings we saw during the shutdown because our buildings are still open. We still have the utilities. We're seeing slight decreases, but it's not significant. And some things, we had in the budget for expenditures was field trips for your students. And they're not going to be going places, but we're looking at virtual options. So it's more so that while there are some savings, the mindset is the students still have needs. We just need to switch those expenditures to meet the needs for the times that we're in now.
Great, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta, and then Ms. Morrison.
She's always a step ahead, so you answered my question. I was asking, how much of the savings do you project from less fuel consumption, utilities? So you said there's not significant.
Well, there are some. Now, as far as the utilities, it's been minimal between the heating, the water, and the electric, it's been, I think, around 10%. The fuel has been down, but I don't want to say that that's a savings, because when we open up to more students and we still have to social distance, these buses are going to be traveling more. You know, any savings that we had in overtime and fuel will be gone very quickly. The other thing with substitutes, where we were seeing a savings in substitutes, you know, we've put in place the contracted COVID subs so that we have less people going in and out of the schools. And any savings we had from those, you know, day-to-day subs, that's gonna be, those savings will be gone as well.
Ms. Morrison?
First, I want to say thank you to you and your department for getting the bonus, the one-time bonus out to all our employees so quickly and timely. I know that it took a lot of work, but I've heard thanks from people that was very welcomed. The second thing that I'm wondering is that our schools, particularly our secondary schools, have athletic budgets that have been significantly impacted by the lack of contest spectators. But as they begin to play, they are going to have expenses like the referees, the security, but they won't have many spectators in that will be contributing to that. And that may provide a challenge for those schools to keep these programs up and going. The third thing that I wanted to say is that we as a board have made a commitment to continue to try in the second half of the first half of next year to see what we can do to implement the step that we were not able to do when our budget was cut in city council, and then with the shutdown. So we are committed as a board to moving forward with that, and we appreciate that you're monitoring, you and Dr. Edwards are monitoring it to make sure that that's at the list of our priorities. So thank you. I know it's a lot of work.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Very detailed. Any other board member would like to raise a question at this time concerning the October 2020 financial report, et cetera? Thank you so much, Ms. Laconich, for the fine work that you continue to do. Thank you so much. And some of those things I'm assuming would be thought through in our later in the meeting. All right, we will now move to agenda item E. The consent agenda is relatively thin for this meeting. We have a human resource report and an addendum, and this is something that is, of course, coming before us for action today. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Nilles has moved. Dr. Brennan is seconded. Is there any further questions, discussion? Hearing none, we will move for the vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And Dr. Edwards, no comment for that? All right, very good. All right, we will now move to a very powerful part of our meeting, as all parts are, to item F1. And we certainly want to say that our students reps, we hope we've had a great Thanksgiving holiday, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. And tonight we'll hear from Grayson Arnold first from Heritage High School, and then Jaden Scott from EC Glass.
Well, while this is getting pulled up, I just want to say thank y'all for being so kind while I wasn't able to be here this past meeting. So I'm going to recap some of the stuff that y'all asked me to do,
Yes.
and then for this month. So I just wanted to start off with, we are pioneers. That's something that we say every single day: welcoming, encouraging, achieving, responsible, and engaged. I just thought it was a good thing to present to the board. But yeah, we can continue to the next thing. Oh. Okay, so this is the hybrid learning model, and it's basically just the schedule We have 2 cohorts, A and B, and we try to keep families together, and then it goes by location from the school for bus purposes. So the day starts off at 7:35, and it ends at 1:35. And then lunch is at 4th and 8th period. Just, for your parents out there, just in case if you need to know your child's schedule. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I asked a couple of students their thoughts on the hybrid learning. Very positive feedback. They really enjoy being able to see their teacher and being able to ask questions and to get that immediate response instead of having to type and wait through email. So that was just one thing that they've said. A lot of people are really happy to see some of their friends. Even though that their friends might be in different cohorts, it's still nice to be able to be in the classroom, see their friends and teachers. And it really, I think that it is beneficial for teachers too. So they're not just teaching to a screen, they're able to see the faces and the curiosity and the wanting to know. So that's just some of the comments right there. But we can move on to next. So these are some, I thought, if I'm gonna get thoughts on hybrid module, I might as well get someone remote learning. And so I feel that LCS students are really kind of split. They love remote and they also love the hybrid model, which I think is really good. So most of these students really like this because they're able to be responsible and do their work on their own time. And I think that's a good practice for college as they will go on and they'll have to do better time management. So I think there's both beneficial sides for each. And then some people really like to get that sleep in. I know I do. So this is the Return to Learn Safely. And this is some of the things that Heritage has implemented to keep us and our students safe. So we've inserted different hand sanitizing stations. So there's some on the wall and then there's some like on desk. And it's just to make sure that like if you're passing, you can get some hand sanitizer, kill those germs real quick. And we also have lines on the ground that keep us separated, so that way we're not, we're doing one way in, one way out, and it's not too much going on. So with this, in that top picture I took at practice, well, at the end of practice, and you can see that the backpacks are spaced out 6 feet, so that way that when students are getting their stuff together to practice and from practice, we're separated, but still able to communicate and talk and have that fun time, which is good.
Nice visual. Thank you.
And then in the bottom picture, you can see some students from Mr. Drumheller's class, I believe. And, they're masked and they're able to learn and get a nice lab in. And also, I wanted to include that for our remote students, if you are having trouble with your own Wi-Fi, you can go to the Heritage parking lot, and we have a hotspot there, and the connection's really good, so that's a good thing. And so in light of the MOU agreement, I would like to just shed some light onto our SRO, Officer Thompson. He's been able to just bring a warm, friendly energy to our environment, as well as safety. And yeah, he's just a great addition to the HHS staff, and we don't want to get rid of him anytime soon. Okay, so this is just, we're now transitioning. This is stuff from this past month. And these are our language teachers, our world language teachers. And they got these nice t-shirts and these really nice masks. And they're just, happy to be able to teach their students and just be together in community. So this is Mr. City. He is fundraising. It's called Mustache for Kids, and it's an event that raises money for local nonprofits that help kids in need. So if anybody would like to donate, there's that link right there. but he's doing well so far, which is good. And then on behalf of Heritage, we would like to thank our nutrition staff. As we are in this pandemic, nutrition has been a hard part for some of those students that are having trouble to get those meals that they used to be so reliant on. So we want to say thank you so, so much to these staff members and volunteers who have been able to take some of their time to reach out to our community and our families. So again, thank you so much. Okay, so I think it was the past 2 weeks, we had Virginia College Application Week, and as a senior, it was pretty exciting to be able to apply to colleges for free, because those applications are pricey. So this is Mr. Cohen. He is the cross-country coach, but he's also the representative for Beacon of Hope. And he has been amazing at helping seniors during that week of just being able to be a hand and help when we're trying to fill out Common App and it's not working right. So thank you so much, Mr. Cohen, for all of the help that you've given Heritage students this past week. These are two of many, but these are the two pictures that I had. Amaya Poe, she got into VCU, and then Alexis Lacey, she got into a lot, which is really good. And I think it's just good to shed some light on our seniors that are able to get into these colleges and take advantage of the opportunity of Virginia College Application Week. So this is the career panel that is happening December 7th, and it's for nursing careers. And I just think it's really cool that Heritage is putting these panels together for students who know what they want to do, so that way they can get that experience, ask what they need to do, what they should expect, what they can do to succeed higher than they could. So I think this is really cool. It's December 7th, 12 p.m., and then the link is right down there. And I put all of the links at the end, so y'all can take a screenshot of that. And then college search. So I am absolutely in love. Beacon of Hope has to be one of my favorite programs at Heritage. It is so amazing how they reach out to students and they help seniors. As a senior, it is so stressful trying to fill out applications and scholarships, but they always make that time to be helpful. So this is just one of the many things that they do for us, and this is one of the virtual visits that they offer. It was yesterday, and it's just an amazing experience that they have all of these different colleges, not just Virginia colleges, but colleges like Penn State, and it's just amazing that they're giving us the chance to see colleges that we can't really right now during this pandemic. It gives us light and hope that we will be able to attend these colleges and will be able to get out of the state that we're in.
Grayson, make sure you say the name of the virtual visit.
Sorry, this virtual visit was James Madison University. And so Pioneer gear. I forgot to put a picture of this lovely mask that I'm sporting today. It's $10, I think, and that's in support of the Pioneer Theater. So that's good. But our athletic department is selling some Pioneer gear. For more information, you can call that number 5400 at the extension 35016. But, so there's just some lovely attire that you can get if you love Heritage, like myself. And so there's just some other links. Those are the links for the Mustache for Kids if you are willing to donate. And then if you have Chromebook problems, I forgot to mention earlier, but I found that in remote, I had a problem with my Chromebook. It wouldn't let me connect to the internet. And then I was like, I have to call. But it was good. So I called that number right there, and they're very helpful, and they get right back to you if they can't immediately. And I think it's a good thing for parents and students to know, to have that information when things go south. And then for the Pioneer gear, there's the number and the extension. But yeah,
Wow.
I think that's it. And then any questions or comments that you would like to get back to me, you can reach me at my email down there.
Gracious.
Good, right?
But we are pioneers.
Wow. All right, Jaden.
Hi, y'all. That was really good, Grayson. All right, so I just wanted to start by going over some of like the past holidays that we've been through. And so I wanted to start with Thanksgiving. I wanted to thank everybody from LCS that helped distribute meals. I read today that we had Dr. Coleman out helping everybody get Thanksgiving meals, and then our faculty and staff for preparing those meals. We know that Thanksgiving is a time where we all want to participate. We all want to be able to be surrounded by family, and just to know that not everybody can, and that we have people so willing to make a difference in the community and step out and be a part of something so amazing. I love that, and I just wanted to say thank you for everybody and anybody who came out. And then on the next slide is Veterans Day. I wanted to thank everybody, not just from ECG, but because I am from Glass, I wanted to use their pictures. So I wanted to thank anybody and everybody who has served in the forces for our country. And so I wanted to put some pictures from our very own EC Glass staff. I don't know everybody in the picture, but I do know that the bottom right, I believe, is Mr. Daughtery, I believe. So, yeah, thank y'all so much. Anybody who's here or who knows anybody in the family, I know it's a brave task. It's a big thing to take on, so I just wanted to thank everybody for that. And then we have from our EC Glass Counseling Department, they have been hosting virtual meetings maybe every week on different tasks, different skills, how to engage better in learning. So this past week was attention and multitasking and time management, and that's a good topic right there. Time management, especially if you're remote. I know hybrid, they only go 2 days, so you still need it. I just think that that's great, and how to keep your attention focused, because some of those classes, y'all, especially since you're not there, you're not getting the full effect. So being able to take notes and learn skills and get help from professionals, y'all, like these are our guidance counselors, they know what they're doing. So to be able to get tips and tricks from people that have so much experience, I think is really good. So I wanted to thank EC Glass for that. And then, yes, we also participated in College Application Week. I've been hearing back from seniors saying that it wasn't the same as last year for obvious reasons. They normally had the on-site acceptances and applications, which is really cool, but this year they did it all virtual, of course, and people were still getting accepted. People are still very excited. People are still trying to get those applications out there, so I did appreciate that. And then, okay, our clubs have been busy, y'all. So NHS and Q Club did a food drive for Parkview Community Mission, and they collected over 400 pounds of food and 15 bags of winter clothing. Yes, I saw these pictures and I was just shocked. I mean, 400 pounds of food, that's a lot. So yes, I wanted to give a shout out to them for doing such great things in our community. Despite what's going on, they're not letting that stop them, and I think that that's really cool too. And then our theater, so the Virginia Theater Association had their first virtual conference. I know that was different for everybody in theater. You know, you go and you get that experience, and I'm pretty sure it was like a weekend long normally. So you would be there for a couple of days, you know, just getting that full experience. And now that COVID has hit us, it wasn't the same, but that didn't stop EC Glass because they ranked superior. And then Jessica Williams, she's a senior. She placed third in the state I'm pretty sure she was doing never mind, I don't remember. But she placed third in the state, so I wanted to give a shout out to her, as well as this, the glass technical design. They placed second place in the technical Olympics. So we wanted to show them some support and some love because it's hard not being able to be there every year, every week, and being able to be there in person. But I wanted to include some pictures of everybody following the guidelines. You know, they're masked up, they're making their videos, doing their technical designs, and I thought that was great. And then, the same as last month, y'all, we're really encouraging students to get on Zoom. If you feel like you're slipping behind, get on Zoom. If you feel like you're confused, get on Zoom. If you think you know what you're doing, get on Zoom. Just go on Zoom. It'll help everybody out, I promise you. Because you never know. You might be going over homework and you have a question. Jot it down. The teachers have allotted times for Zoom calls. Get on there. Talk to them. I mean, they're teachers. It's their job. They're going to show you what to do. We want all of our students to succeed. We want to see them do great. But we can't help you if you're not there, you know. So stay on Zoom, get on Zoom, sign up. It's not that hard. It's cool, I promise y'all. It'll work out fine. And then the SRO, the MOU agreement, I went through everything. I know that y'all asked for suggestions. Everything looked fine to me. Nothing really stood out in particular that I was like, oh, change that. So no, everything looked great. But for the SROs in the school setting, I know, like, in this day and age, everything is on TV, everything is on the news. So we see everything going on in the world, and we see police officers, and we automatically get this negative connotation for them, you know. Nobody wants to be friends with the police officer. You don't want to have to talk to the police officer. But the SROs are only there to make our schools safer, to make our community better. And I wanted that to be known, but it's also so hard to think that if we don't really know who our SROs are. We take a lot of time in the beginning of the school year getting to know our teachers, our principals, and everything, and I feel like they're really overlooked. I know a lot of students don't even know who ours is, and she's so sweet. Officer Ramirez, she's so nice, so kind. She'll do anything for anybody, but just due to everything going on, people see a police officer, they're like, oh no, I don't want to deal with that. But I do think that an introduction and like a nice formal introduction and just some information about each SRO every year to the students would really help us out, you know. And I feel like we just need to be able to be familiar with our SRO. We shouldn't have to fear them when they're here for us to make us safe and keep us in a tight community, you know. And we're grateful that they're there because the world is crazy, y'all. Having a police officer there on standby is not going to hurt anybody, but we just want to make sure that everybody knows that. We don't ever want anyone to feel like they're not safe where they are, because that's what they're there for. They're there to keep us safe. And Officer Ramirez, I'm sure your SRO as well, they just want to see you do good. They're not there to hurt you. They're not there to make you feel any kind of way. They're there for support just as much as your teachers are. I know that I could go to the officer any day and she would have a sit-down conversation with me. Like, they're there for support. They love you just as much as the teachers do. So it's no need to feel any kind of like animosity or anything. They're great people. But I just feel like that should be known more. So maybe like a video introduction, or I know that I saw my SRO a lot during lunch. So maybe during lunches or something, they could do something to just get familiar with the students and get acquainted. And I'm pretty sure that was my last slide. All right. Yeah, okay. Stay safe, toppers. That was my last slide. And I just wanted to say thank you all for having me. And yeah.
Grayson and Jaden, thank you both. That clap was well deserved. I want to say how proud I am of the board. Thank you, Susan Morrison. Thank you, Vice Chair Brennan, who helps me in making sure that our reps are moving along nicely. And those were outstanding reports, well taken. And give them one more hand as they Just a few school divisions in Virginia do not see the value of student reps, but all that do benefit richly from it, and it was a privilege to hear ours tonight. All right, we will now move to the next item on our agenda, which is item G, dealing with our school board committee and advisory reports. And so our first report tonight under this section will be, of course, for information from our Finance Committee Chair, Mr. Gary Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What a difficult act to have to follow. And I don't have cool slides either. The Finance Committee met on Tuesday, November 24th at 3:30. Dr. Carter, Dr. Nilles, and myself were present, as well as non-voting member Dr. Coleman. We were joined by Dr. Edwards and Ms. Laconich. Tina Day was also in attendance as the board clerk. The committee covered several items during our meeting, including the following. Ms. Laconich reviewed the October financial reports, as well as overviews and summaries of the CARE funding. We also received our monthly insurance updates. Ms. Laconich reviewed sales tax receipts for the past years, an update on the 2021 year sales tax tracking, and that was referred to earlier in our report. Dr. Edwards presented a summary of the Virginia School Board Association presentation on the budget process from Chesterfield School Board Chair Ms. Bailey and Superintendent Dr. Thomas, and that was very informative and a good roadmap, and had some good ideas that LCS can also use. Dr. Edwards and Ms. Laconich shared our fiscal year 2020 budget development process and updated us on the status. We discussed the overall timeline for the budget development, including meetings with individual schools, which is in process right now, preparing the draft detailed budgets within the administration, the upcoming school board work sessions in late winter and late winter, community input, and finally presentation to the city. We discussed how best to roll out the budget in a transparent and open manner, and how to get maximum stakeholder input and buy-in throughout the entire process. So we want to encourage the school board members to be involved with that and support that as well. We do not have a Finance Committee meeting in December. Our next Finance Committee meeting will be on January the 5th at 3:30, and that is a date change, so keep that in mind. It's not going to be on the third Tuesday, but because of some scheduling in January with our meetings and so forth, our meetings are readjusted accordingly, and Finance will meet on the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Very well-run meeting, by the way. Any questions for the Finance Committee Chair? I would like to ask, would it be helpful if all the board members had the Chesterfield report, or should that just be reserved for Finance Committee?
I can send that to everybody.
Okay, that's a thought. All right, we'll now move to G2, Governor's School Committee Chair, Mr. Gary Harvey.
Okay, the Central Virginia Governing School Board met on Wednesday, November 4th at 1 p.m. The board covered several items during their meeting as followed. Dr. Smith presented the financial report with the current status. We discussed diversity within the governor's schools throughout Virginia. Dr. Smith shared that each of the divisions within the Central Virginia Governing School had shared their demographic information with the school administration, who is compiling the data to share with the Department of Education. As a personal comment, it did bring to the forefront that within LCS there are opportunities where we can work to inspire and encourage a greater interest in the Gov school within our diverse population of learners. And it is my hope that LCS will continue to stay abreast of these issues and these opportunities with our learners. The board reviewed its policies and approved several updates and changes to the Central Virginia Governing School policies. Dr. Smith updated the board on COVID-related planning and updates as they impact the operation of the Governor's School. The board approved changes to the Central Virginia Governor's School staff compensation and that's reflective of what the proposed compensation changes are within LCS, because we are the host school. Our next meeting is actually tomorrow, December 2nd at 1 p.m.
All right, Dr. Gupta has a question.
I had a suggestion. you know, they really want to increase diversity. How about opening up these seats, which they were asking additional per student revenue for free for economically disadvantaged, you know, kids of color or different backgrounds. If they're truly in diversity, let's do that. It may not bring the revenue they wanted to, but it'll help them diversify their pool.
Okay, I'll make that suggestion. I know that would be something that we would do in cooperation with LCS within our.
Or all the school divisions they have.
Yeah.
Thank you for that suggestion, Dr. Gupta. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Harvey, for your service in that regard. We'll now move to G3, the Laurel Regional School Committee Chair, Dr. Sharon Carter.
The Laurel Regional School Board convened November the 5th at 10 o'clock via Zoom meeting. And the meeting had two items of focus. One is the board recommended or approved the director's recommendation for the employers to benefit from or be awarded the bonuses that's similar to the Lynchburg City School systems. And also we're looking at now, since Dr. Shook is retiring from Bedford, that there now will be another superintendent to come in to reside over the Laurel School Board budget. And the school is doing great, board rather. The school is doing well with following the mitigation guidelines and with the in-person learning that they're currently doing. And they also have students doing remote learning too. But there hasn't been any major problems.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. You have provided able service on that board and sharing with us. Thank you so much. All right, G4, the STEM Academy Committee Chair, Dr. Michael Nilles.
The STEM Academy met on November 10th. It was a routine business meeting. Ms. Cash gave us an update on how students are doing and progressing with a combination of remote learning and some limited in-school work. It's all going well. Students are self-screening and haven't been any real issues. So things are moving along. Students are engaged. You know, one of the goals for the STEM Academy is fundraising and to get some funds in for scholarships for kids to participate in the program and expand it somewhat. So, as well as they're always on the lookout for internships for any companies that are willing to sponsor, work with kids in a kind of applied technology area. You know, offer up to contact Ms. Cash at the Accelerate Academy. So it was like I said, it was a pretty routine meeting. Our next meeting is on January 26th, I apologize.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Nilles, for the expertise you bring to that. And if there's appropriate ways in which the board can help in any of those fundraising efforts, please let us know. All right. Thank you for those reports so far. And now G5, the Legislative Advocacy Committee Chair, Ms. Belle Evans.
Well, as y'all all know, we had our Zoom call on November 13th, I believe it was. So I just want to quickly say thank you to city council members who attended and the mayor for opening up our meeting. It went very well. I have sent follow-up emails to everyone that attended, thanking them for attending. And we were scheduled to have another meeting December 8th, and after speaking with Dr. Edwards and Mrs. Reeves, we are going to wait until January. Right now, the community relations, it's not a lot going on with COVID, so we are going to wait and meet. I did sign up for the Capitol Conference. That's not until the end of January. And I think we're going to meet with the Financial Committee in December. So I don't know if that's that 5th or if that will be another.
The 5th.
The 5th. So we're all going to meet on the 5th together as a group. So we're not planning on meeting in December. So there's not a lot to report right now.
All right. First of all, let me see if there's anyone else have any statement that they would like to make to the Legislative Advocacy Committee. I certainly, Ms. Evans, want to thank you. It was a lot of work to put that together, and you did it in a first-class way, and everyone was so supportive, and I think we got good coverage. And I do want to acknowledge that Councilman Randy Nelson sent us something indicating his, it wasn't there, but that he just likes the way we're moving with various things, and so that was outstanding. So if you would, let's give that committee a good round.
Thank you, everybody, for doing your part. It makes it easy.
I also would like to acknowledge out of the committee the fine work that the Legislative Advocacy Committee in putting that agenda together and sharing the agenda, and our support for our legislative position that went before the Delegate Assembly. And I do want to thank the committee. I want to thank Bob Brennan, who was very integral in presenting at an earlier meeting of VSBA. And then Delegate Sharon Carter was absolutely brilliant. After she finished talking, 76%. That means that there were some who were not in agreement, but 76% of the voting delegates approved that. And we also have letters of commendation from Councilman Nelson and from Councilwoman Tweedy and Mayor Mary Jane Dolan, commending this body for taking such a bold initiative on a case-by-case basis. And so even though we do so much, every now and then we ought to pause and give our own selves a hand. That's a wonderful thing. All right. Thank you so much for everybody. All right, we'll move on now. Thank you, Ms. Evans. G6, Equity Task Force Advisory Committee, Ms. Ethel Reeves.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The Equity Task Force met on November 11th at 5:30. We met virtually. We were pleased to have Board Chair Dr. Coleman and Vice Chair Dr. Brennan join us. Members of the LCS team gave an overview of what has occurred since the abrupt closing of school in March through November. We also shared information that was related to the tremendous amount of community support that we have been given during this time. The task force was made aware of the Virginia Department of Education's Ed Equity Plan and audit tool and how it will be used to further the work in the division. Because the Equity Task Force is an advisory committee to the board, we will share action items and successes with the board. The task force will also make recommendations to the board. The division identified areas in which we need assistance, and the Equity Task Force will focus on these 3 areas. These areas include family and community engagement, mentoring, and talent acquisition. Task force members were asked to join one of the above-mentioned teams. Dr. Edwards also shared that the division is reviewing policies, and anyone wanting to assist in that area should make us aware of that. As an aside, we did send the Equity Task Force members the Memorandum of Understanding with regard to the SROs and got feedback from some of the members. So that's the level of work that we've begun. The committee is one that is a liaison between the community and the school division. They were encouraged that as they hear of concerns, comments in the community, that they please share them with me or Dr. Edwards. Parents and guardians have been told to address concerns with the teachers first and then the principal. If there was no resolve, then of course they would contact the central office directors as appropriate. This was information that was shared with the task force so that they could help us help the community. We also reiterated that task force members must share their concerns with us so that they can be investigated and addressed. We cannot address or fix any problems that we are not made aware of. Also, with regard to mentoring, Dr. Edwards did remind us of the laws, processes, and procedures that must be followed with regard to having mentors and those around our students. Those things also included confidentiality and protecting our students' privacy. Our meeting was adjourned, and we will meet again on January 27th.
Wow, thank you, Ethel. Dr. Gupta would like to raise a
I had a request and suggestion. You know, as LCS moves forward in community involvement, in the spirit of equity and inclusion, we make sure that we include every institution of higher education. They have different backgrounds, different religious beliefs, different student population. So we should not look like as affiliated with one school of higher education. We have 5, 6 colleges. So we have them all on the table, or at least try to include them, be a voice in our future. I don't know how to do it, but that's part of the equity and inclusion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta, for your valid point. Anyone else like to share? Thank you, Ethel. You've got a lot on your plate. You're doing it well. Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and that area of our school division is moving forward. All right, thank you so much. Item 7, School Health Advisory Board, Ms. Ann Bond-Gentry.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Our School Health Advisory Board has been, our School Health Advisory Committee, I'm sorry, that's its old title.
Okay.
We have been quite busy, and we met in October, actually, and we also have met in November. Our last meeting was November the 11th, and at that time, it was the first opportunity for us to have an opportunity to talk with Ms. Beth Morris about school nutrition and the programs since we had students back in the building. So Beth gave us an update that day about all the things that were happening with school nutrition in the school building since we had students back in, and also in how the feeding program was working in the community that day. We also had on our agenda to talk about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which was scheduled for December, which is coming up shortly. We had a small committee that met in October to do some planning and evaluation of the survey tool and to look at that and prepare it for use. The survey is scheduled to be given to 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students next week. They will have the opportunity to take it, those students who are hybrid students, and will also have an opportunity to provide that for our remote students. We also met that day and talked about flu vaccination opportunities for our students. And we worked out an opportunity with the health department to have a flu vaccination day specifically designated for Lynchburg City School students. We did that on Monday, this past Monday, the 30th, where there was a 9-to-1 opportunity during the day when we don't have students in school for families to go to the health department and have that vaccination. We also have a December 4th, 4 to 6 time frame in place as well with the health department for families to go. And we put information out through social media, and we also put information out for students to take home, just a flyer to let them know and their families know that that was available to them. The committee has also been talking about how we do COVID updates and tracing and that information, and so we talked about that and with the things we had in place here in order to conduct those things and keep up with those things. And so we reviewed that for the committee that day. We had 12 members present the day we met, November 11th, and we will meet again on January the 22nd. If you have questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them for you.
Thank you, Ann. Dr. Brennan?
Ms. Ann Bond-Gentry, thank you so much for your work and for your report. Everything is so difficult in the COVID era. How will you help with participation in the survey in December to try to get a good return on that?
We have a couple ideas about that. For one, we had talked about, because the survey is anonymous, teachers will not necessarily know if a child completes the survey or not. Excuse me. So we had talked about the possibility of making it an assignment and then having a teacher create 1 or 2 questions as a quiz sort of question to make sure that they could sort of figure out if students did in fact participate. We were trying to think of creative ways to have students participate because we'd like to have as much return as possible. We have some questions on the survey this year for the first time related to COVID and related to the impact COVID has on families and students. So we hope that students will take it. And like I said, it's available for 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students to take, both hybrid and remote. So we're trying to think of creative ways to encourage students to participate in the survey. We also are required, as you know, to contact parents and have students opt out if they want, parents would like them to opt out. And we've taken care of all of that. And we had very few parents who opted out students this year, which is good. So we hope to get a good return.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Dr. Carter?
And Mrs. Bond-Gentry, are there any patterns that you're seeing as you all monitor the tracking of individuals that are either come in contact with someone that's positive or that is tested positive? Any patterns that you're seeing at particular middle, I don't know whether you can say, but schools, or just any patterns that you're seeing that we can try to prevent or mitigate?
One of the most difficult, we're finding actually in our conversations with the health department and in our work that one of the difficult parts is we don't know where the virus comes from, of course. And so all we're doing is preventing as best we can. And in the school environment, I think we've done a really nice job of preventing. We've had very few situations, if any, where within the school division there's been a contact, a positive situation. What's really happening is that people are going about their normal lives and coming to work. And as a result of that, we're finding more adults and more children as well who are coming to us that might be exposed or have been positive because of their normal life routine and not because they've been in a school environment. In a school environment, we felt like we've been relatively safe, and we've done a very nice job of cleaning and masking and distancing and hand washing and all the things that have been preventative. And so, like I said, the pattern we're seeing is it's coming to us from the outside in, basically. And that's something that we can't really prevent. We can prepare for and do a good job of, but we can't really prevent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other board member? Yes, indeed. Thank you for that report and the incredible work that you all do, and you know that. Thank you so much.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
All right, CTE is critical. Career and Technical Education Advisory. Dr. Brad Bryant.
Good evening, Dr. Edwards, Dr. Coleman, and board members. Our CTE Advisory Committee met on October 23rd with 13 people in attendance. It was great to see everyone, even though it was a Zoom meeting. The primary focus of the meeting was for me to give an update on our federal program monitoring review. Prior to the federal program monitoring review last year, we had to submit 226 electronic documents to the VDOE for their review. They did visit our schools for 2 days in February. Some issues were some licensure issues, completer sequences, student organizations, and a couple of safety issues. Since that time, our completer sequences have been solved, our CTE student organizations are up and running, and our safety issues are slowly being resolved. I have purchased safety cabinets so that we can store chemicals and paints or other flammables, and we are replacing broken equipment as we speak. Other parts of the meeting, we heard from Jason Ferguson. He's the Associate Vice President of Professional and Career Studies at CVCC, and he will be joining the group. We heard from Jessie Hunt, who is our career counselor. She is working diligently to make sure our seniors get the contact hours that they need in order for them to apply for certifications and licensures as they graduate. On top of that, we also heard from Ben Bowman from the Virginia Career Works. He's working on a proposal to have virtual job shadowing and virtual career fairs for our students maybe next year, and I see that as a great resource whether we're in COVID or not. As I close out, this email was sent out as the employee spotlight. This is, you probably can't see it, but it was an email, it was employee spotlight. This is Mr. Snow. He's an auto mechanics teacher at EC Glass High School. And he has a bulletin board on his room, and it has about 30 pieces of paper on it. And it says at the top, what did you do to improve yourself during COVID-19? And these are all his certifications that he's received during COVID. Some of them have to do with education, some of them have to do with technology, some of them are Google related, and some of them have to do with auto technology. So this is just an example of a teacher who is evolving all the time. CTE teachers always evolve. Our curriculum is not the same as it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And we're just proud of people like this and other CTE teachers. So thank you very much for your time and for your participation.
Thank you so much. It's just critical what you're doing. Any board member would like to ask the good doctor any question? All right, very important work.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey, for attending our meetings, and our next meeting is in late January, and you'll all get an invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey, for attending that. Thank you so much, Dr. Bryant. Board, I think we can press our way. If there's the will of the board to take a break, we can, but I think we can press our way. All right, we're going to press our way into item H, unfinished business. Number 1, return to learn updates by Deputy Superintendent, Ms. Amy Pugh, and she may or may not be assisted by others.
Yes. So we have a couple sections to this return to learn, our normal return to learn section. We have a return to play. That's also going to give a presentation, and then I'll talk a little bit more about metrics at the end. So we'll start with regular return to learn.
Excellent.
Thank you, Board, for having us again tonight. We have an update, and I'm going to let Dr. Jordan introduce.
How do you follow the student reps and introduce the ITRTs? I'm sandwiched right in the middle of greatness tonight. We want to make sure as we come to you with return to learn updates that we are presenting realistic pictures to you. There are challenges. There have been instructional challenges in LCS since the inception of LCS. So as we talk about remote instruction, as we talk about hybrid instruction, we are always trying to improve instruction. So while we've had some success with remote instruction, you just heard really positive comments from student reps, and I hold my breath when they're getting ready to tell you about instruction, but I want to make sure that you all realize that we're taking any sort of criticism. We're monitoring social media. We are fielding phone calls, emails. They're going to tell you about a lot of this as well. We want to hear instructional concerns. We want to get better. Last year, Chuck Yarbrough and some of the CNI staff, we walked the middle schools and we went in lots of classrooms and we were specifically looking at the use of technology because LCS led the pack in one-to-one devices at the secondary level in the area. And so we were looking at how are students using these devices, and that seems like a lifetime ago. That was only a few months ago, but we were looking at, are Chromebooks just a substitute for a worksheet, or are they really enhancing instruction? So we were already looking at this months ago. We're still looking at this, but we've been catapulted off the edge of using remote instruction, using all of our tech tools right now. But I want you to know, as we highlight a lot of what's going on the tech side, we are still very keen on what's happening. And if people are unhappy, if you feel like, I now forget what you said the other day, Dr. Edwards, classroom instruction should not be what's happening in your dining room or as you're sitting on your bed. So we don't want hybrid instruction to look exactly like remote instruction looked. As I said, I get to introduce the ITRTs. I think that stands for Instructional Technology Resource Teachers, but they are rock stars. And if I had to tell you what they do, they are iron sharpening iron. This team of folks is always a step ahead of the rest. They are going to work hard. They are going to produce the podcast. They're going to write the blog. I don't know if they ever sleep. they are supporting staff, they are supporting us, they are supporting students, and just a shameless plug, we probably need more of them. So please reach out if there are instructional concerns, but I want you to hear from them about the tech side, the instructional technology side of Return to Learn.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. I am, let's see, it should click over. My name is Erin Kumanaki, and I am one of a 10-member team. Joining me tonight is Tina McAlexander. You can clearly tell who we are from our Bitmojis. That is the website that we've developed on the bottom. Please go to it at your convenience, like and subscribe. A big part of what we do as an ITRT is supporting staff with how they can embed technology into their curriculum in the classroom. So in the past, we've always done tech tips for teachers, send out emails. Each one of us relays this information to teachers in a different way, depending on the school that we're at, whether it's an elementary school, middle, or high, and what's appropriate for the teachers in our building. We try and relay the best practices in educational technology and the new trends in instructional technology. We're big on doing the research and then providing that to our teachers. We've also always done how-to videos for staff. A big part of what we do has been going into, in the past, classrooms or offering times in the building where teachers could get professional development with some of the software that the division has bought, as well as free resources that you can find online. So this image is just one of the previous newsletters that we've sent out, and this goes out to the entire division. But we realize these newsletters are just getting clogged in people's inboxes. You know, this year, everyone's getting emails about educational technology. So this year, we went a step further in supporting our staff by creating a website. A member of our team was like, you know, we're reaching teachers by talking to them directly and making these videos, but maybe I prefer a podcast. I prefer to listen. So we developed a podcast. Kat Phillips at EC Glass is really the forefront of that in the podcast that she leads. We've developed a blog. I prefer to read, and that's how information sinks in. So a blog that incorporates kind of the latest trends. And a big part of this is embedding the curriculum into the technology. In the past, we've seen that a lot of teachers find a cool resource and they want to use that cool resource, but we're trying to show teachers that you think about the curriculum, you have that in mind, and then our job is to try and show them what technology best supports that teaching. The technology comes after the curriculum, and that's our job. We've got instructional coaches that have joined us in podcasts and helping us with blog content. We've had teachers, whether they're high school teachers have joined us, special education teachers have joined us in these podcasts and blog content. So it's been a real good way to highlight some of the work that LCS is doing with the teachers and supporting the staff. It's also a great way to just bookmark and reference. Teachers can come to the site at any point. So if they're not ready for digesting content that day that the newsletter comes out, they no longer have to fish through email. They can go to this site. And the last big part about this site is that we also have a YouTube channel. So we now have a YouTube channel. You can find us at LCS ITRTs, and this is where we have instructional videos. We have playlists for teachers, we have playlists for parents, we have playlists for students. Just today, I had a teacher asking me if we had a specific video for IXL that was on our YouTube channel, and I said no, but give me 24 hours and I'll make it for you. I'll have it to you tomorrow. And this is public, so it's accessible to everyone. So those are ways that we have been supporting some of our staff with this new site. So now I'm going to let Tina take over and how we've also been supporting families.
Hi.
I am Tina McAlexander. I am the ITRT at Heritage Elementary and Sandusky Elementary Schools. I'm going to talk to you about how we've been supporting families. So, you know, it takes a village, right? And especially right now, more than ever, with our kids and their education. So we are providing like a wraparound approach. We're getting them from all angles if we can. We started back in July, and some very hot days, doing Chromebook rollout outside where we distributed like 3,000 devices.
Wow.
Once we distributed those devices, we also created a support email account, just basically so they can reach us. We mainly initially rolled it out for parents of K-2 students to request a device. If they did not have other devices in the home, we have the help desk as a means for them to contact us. And we also have a student tech assistance Google form that if a child is having an issue with their Chromebook, they can submit a request through the form and they will be contacted. It is very quick. I use the form myself for my daughter's Chromebook, and within 24 hours we were contacted, even though I work in IT, so technically I didn't really have to fill out the form, but we were contacted really quick and we got it taken care of. A big part of our job this year that's very different from what we've normally done is we are really communicating with parents.
Wow.
Not just parents, but grandparents, aunts, uncles, babysitters, daycare centers, everyone that is working with that child trying to help them be successful. So that means we're on the phone. We are taking Zoom calls. I'm sharing my screen, showing them exactly what they need to do to help that student complete the assignment that they need to complete. It is sometimes that it's times that those calls then turn into home visits using, you know, social distancing guidelines. But as a parent of 2 kids in LCS, when I hear and feel that anxiety and the stress that the parent or whoever I'm speaking to, I feel that through the phone, and we can't seem to get it resolved over the phone or Zoom. My next question is, are you home? Can I come by? I stay outside, so we are fully distanced, and I have on gloves and everything, but my goal is to take away that anxiety and that stress that they are feeling. Because if they're stressed, then our kids are stressed, and then they will not be as successful as we know they can be. Sometimes they contact us and they would like an in-person meeting, and we will establish that usually at the school if need be. One of our new things that I'm very excited about, we're currently working on, is community outreach. We all have students that some of our teachers have not been able to reach them at this time. And so we are, as ITRTs, going to be reaching out and trying to get out into centers throughout the city, places where our kids are during the day, where we can meet a couple hours. Maybe their Chromebook is broken, but they have no way to get it to a school to be serviced. That's where we will come in, and we will help fix that problem. We're going to bring the solution to them, since they can't necessarily get to us.
I like that. Bring the solution.
Another way we're supporting our families is, Ms. Jordan referenced the fact that sometimes you do wonder if our team ever sleeps, constantly creating things to make life easier. So for our parents, we have tech guides. It may look different at each school because we are catering it to the needs of our population in our school, but sending these home, like through the teachers pushing it out, so that if parents have questions, they can simply go here for a reference and click and try to find a solution there. We also create lots of videos. So we have our YouTube channel, as Aaron discussed. And then we also, at the beginning of the year, created this student parent tutorials. It is like stuffed to the gills, full of different videos using the programs that we use within the division. I have to watch videos because I'm currently helping a child with advanced algebra 2, which I took that a really long time ago, so I don't remember. So just watching that video really quick helps refresh my memory, and then I'm able to help them. So sometimes they just need to watch that as a guide, and they're able to fix the issue themselves. And I'm going to turn it back to Aaron.
Yeah, so we're not without challenges. And I'm sure you could assume some of the challenges just by hearing Tina and I speak about reaching teachers and also families. A big part of the challenge is just teaching technology, but having to use technology to teach it. I mean, you're trying to teach how to use Zoom and the best practices while you're having to Zoom. So there are just natural hurdles there. The different range in tech abilities, and that goes from students in elementary school up to parents, grandparents, just everyone's comfort level with technology is different. So what we find to be a useful tool and most appropriate, we come back and realize, oh no, we need to scaffold that a little more. That's teachers as well. Teachers are at different levels on the spectrum with how they've been using technology in the past and now how they need to use it in the future. With the families, access to Wi-Fi, that in the community, that has been an issue, and new ways to support students with disabilities as well as our English language learners. And so we've been working with those teachers as well to help figure out how to support them. So yeah, just these learning curves. And so we are open to any suggestions. We appreciate feedback where we can improve in supporting both staff and families on our end. So that's our little spiel for tonight. So thank you for your time. I don't know if there are questions or...
Well, what you all have put out goes a long way with telling our story, and we want to thank you all for the depths of what you're doing. Dr. Sinha.
This is all really wonderful. Just a quick question. If I'm on the LCS homepage, how do I find you or your resources?
Yeah, so our resources on our website are made for staff. So our staff so it's not as much for parents or students.
Got it.
Our YouTube channel is geared towards staff, parents, and students, and we have various playlists. So when we create videos, we just remind teachers, look there, and then oftentimes teachers will attach those to their Google Classroom, the link to those videos.
All right, thanks.
Was there some more?
Belle has a question. Dr. Cole.
I'm very sorry. Let me just stay on this side since I wouldn't look. Dr. Gupta, and then we'll go over to this side.
And I appreciate what you do, and I've seen in my own case how you adapted the equipment for my daughter's needs. So I have seen in action what you guys do. But I had a question for Dr. Jordan. In terms of this COVID-19 pandemic, and I've been raising this issue for the last 2-3 years about achievement gap, and I know it has worsened because it's no more socio-economic, it has other parameters attached to it. Would you be able to share with board, and I'm not putting you in spot today, what actions LCS has done so far to counter that? Not a detailed plan later, what is being done on the ground, so people know what are we doing to meet that challenge so we don't have a lost generation of students going forward.
Absolutely. And I would just say, as Aaron and Tina just told you, instruction has been catapulted to the forefront right now. We're not talking about behavior this year. We're not talking about classroom management. We are talking about instruction, and we are addressing gaps. We are addressing student needs. We are addressing it by name and by need, like our mission says. We are putting many of our resources to where we know that we have gaps. We're making leaps and bounds with having a division-wide approach to literacy. I don't want to say too much right now that may let the cat out of the bag before staff knows about it, but we have to make sure that we are addressing the gaps where we know we have gaps. We are putting in Tier 3 interventions in 2 of our middle schools that are in school improvement, so we are kind of doubling down on some programs that we already have in place through some of our grant-funded programs.
Would you be able to email me later on? There's no rush to see what actions as a curriculum instruction staff has done proactively and as reactively, both ways.
Sure.
Thank you.
And something that the ITRTs didn't mention, they gave out 3,000 devices in pouring rain. How many of those days were you? 2 days. Yes. So they gave you the rosy picture of giving out 3,000 devices, but it was flooding one of those days.
Thank you. Before I go to this side, was there anyone else on this side? I don't know if I may have missed. All right. Who had your hand up? Ms. Evans?
First of all, I think your resources for the teachers are invaluable. I think it's awesome that they can go to that, find something so they're not doing the same work that you're already doing that will help to make them easier. And I guess my question is more just in general with Return to Learn. I still have a lot of concerns about in-person learning and it being consistent in the high schools, that it is not the same thing that you get if you are a stay-at-home student, that it needs to be different. The instruction needs to be there. And the message that I'm getting from people in my district that call and from my own experiences, that's not the case, that it's very dependent upon the class level you're in and the teachers that you have. And I think we just need to be very clear that I know Dr. Edwards has been clear on what her expectations are for the school, because we've heard her say it, we've all said it. We expect teaching going on. If parents are sending their children to school during a pandemic, they are sending them because they need instruction. If your child can do it without instruction, they're keeping them at home so they don't have to go through the pandemic. But if we're sending your child to school and taking that chance, there has got to be instruction in every single classroom. It cannot be because you're in a high-level class, you're getting instruction, and if you're in a regular ed class, you're not. And I just very much worry because it's constant feedback of the inconsistencies. And when I say that, I don't think we're talking about elementary and middle, we're talking about high school. And that very much is still my biggest concern with the hybrid learning. That it needs to be if a student is in school, they should not be doing Google Classroom on their Chromebook that they could be doing at home. To me, that's not the point of being there. And so I think we need to be adamant, and I know Dr. Edwards has, but I want to put out to the public that our intention is teaching is happening. So when we hear it's not, that's hard. So I just think we just need to keep pushing that's what we expect. It's not, I think teachers probably worry about the students who are at home. Is it fair for me to teach this or do that? And I think we've got to get out of that mindset. If a student is hybrid, a parent has chosen that because they need in-person instruction. So I just want to put out there again to the community that that is our expectation, that students are being taught in the classroom. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Evans. Ms. Morrison?
And I would like to echo what Ms. Evans said, and I'd also like to go further and say that it's not that way in every classroom. There are teachers that are doing direct instruction and interaction with students, but our expectation is that it will occur in every classroom. And if that's not occurring, the parent should contact the teacher, and if it doesn't change, contact the principal, because the principals and the assistant principals need to get into those classrooms and find out what's going on. And I would say that would be the best plan moving forward. But I also would like to thank those teachers at the secondary schools who are doing exceptional work with students. And I know it from personal experience, and there are teachers that are doing that, but our expectation is that all will do it.
And I'm just going to chime in, I agree. A lot of them are doing it, so thank you to the ones that are doing it. That is happening.
Thank you so much. Before we move to Dr. Carter's question, Dr. Jordan, did you want to respond?
I wanted to echo that. Start with teachers, go to administration, but do not be afraid to reach out to anybody that you see standing up here. I was talking to a parent of a middle school student the other day, and she said, "What should I do?" And I said, exactly what you were doing. Facebook rants don't go very far unless we see them. So when the student rep said, "Get on the Zoom," yes, get on the Zooms. Interact with your teachers. Be there for synchronous learning, but we're expecting that interaction in the classroom. So we want parents to know, don't be afraid to reach out if things are not going well. We're having really productive conversations with parents, and we wouldn't know some of the issues if parents weren't calling. And you all are interacting with parents on so many levels that it's helping us get better. So we have to make sure that people understand the expectation for when we're in the classroom, we want classroom instruction. And that will be using technology sporadically. So if you go by and you see that a student is on a Chromebook, then do another round and see if that continues for a longer time. So we need to make sure that we are respecting the use of technology appropriately in the classroom, but we don't want technology to be the replacement for the classroom.
Dr. Carter?
Can you explain what varying access to Wi-Fi is and how accessible is it if someone needs to use a Wi-Fi or to borrow one, or what's the process?
Well, varying access is just that. It's that some families have different levels of access. Some have adequate internet access at home, and others have, it's reliable. Others have internet access, but it's not reliable, and then there are those that don't have internet access at all. And we are working with T-Mobile. We have that in place right now. That's part of one of the last grant funding that came in, was part of the competitive grant funding through CARES. And we're working with T-Mobile to get roughly 750 Wi-Fi hotspots. And we've worked with the schools. Ethel Reeves and her team, as well as John Collins and the IT department, have worked at the school level to get the names of those families and students that need those Wi-Fi hotspots so that we can provide them for them, so that they will have adequate access to do the work.
So right now, it's not available, or they're not available. Are they available?
We are in the process of getting them. I think they should be here in the next couple of weeks. But currently, we had to wait for the funding to be awarded to us, and then we moved as quickly as we could to work with T-Mobile to get those hotspots in.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Dr. Brennan?
I'd just like to reiterate what my colleagues have said as far as the phenomenal job that the staff is doing, the teachers, the staff, the IT, RT, you know, the amount of effort you put into this. I'd love for you to come to my house and decrease the anxiety about computers in my house. It would be great.
Sign up too.
Right. Despite all this huge effort, I think we all know that on a national level and a local level, we're not doing as well as we'd like to do. And there was, you know, national publicity last week about Northern Virginia and Fairfax County and their failure rate, and that's not unique to them. It's all over. I know that you all are looking at grading and how that will work. Is there any comment about that at this point, or you're still looking at how grading will be done in this new time under the Return to Learn plan?
I think that's perfect timing, because we are going to talk a little bit about the high school program of studies. We're having a meeting with ITRTs tomorrow about some grading concerns. We know that we have to update an exam policy that because of SOL waivers and flexibility. So we are having many conversations about grading for mastery. ITRTs, one of the first blogs they put out, if you all have not read these things or listened to the podcast, it will help you in your life, because they give the most helpful tips. One of the things that they talked about first is when we went into this virtual world, like it or not, our amount of emails skyrocketed. This is the first time in my life I've not been able to handle my email. They talked about virtual feedback. We can't easily give meaningful feedback that won't take hours and hours and hours. So when you hear teachers, they are spending hours providing meaningful feedback, doing videos. You all can explain it much more than I can, but just managing the amount of interactions on Seesaw and Google Classroom. So grading, but feedback has been a really hot topic that the ITRTs, the instructional coaches, our teams have been really neck deep in this year. So it will be a continuing conversation, and we know there's at least one policy that will have to be amended because of some flexibility.
Great, thank you.
All right, Dr. Sinha and then Dr. Gupta.
Tied to grading, I've heard some parents expressed frustration with Infinite Campus not being kept up to date in real time. And so, you know, I've heard stories of 53 notifications in like 7 minutes and a grade going from an F- to an A+ in the same class. And you know, parents rely on that as a way to monitor what their students are doing. I've heard stories of kids having to email their teachers to say, please update this so my mom will quit nagging me to do the assignment that I did already. So, and I know it's everybody's time is just, there's just so many demands on it for the things you just explained, but I think it's really crucial that teachers find a way or resources are given to them to help them maintain that and keep that current and ongoing, so parents aren't finding out late that their student is behind or that a student's gone weeks with a 0. I mean, you know, a parent feels like they should be contacted if that's the case, if they're not looking into Infinite Campus. So
And
I don't know if there's anything you can do about the numerous notifications or, you know, the frustration that parents have about that.
And I would say, again, reach out to teacher, administrator, and anybody that you see here. Not live on a board meeting, so we call anybody out.
Yeah.
But we are asking for parents to go to Infinite Campus. We're asking parents to go there to get information from us. So when they're going there for grades and grades aren't there, then that is frustrating. So we need to make sure that Infinite Campus is being updated, you know, weekly at a minimum. So we know that parents can help students get caught up or address any sort of deficiencies. So you're exactly right.
Dr. Gupta?
Yeah.
And I'm going to address Dr. Edwards for this. It troubles me finding out that we have varying internet access 9 months into the pandemic now. And that could leave many of these kids not being able to access. So would you be able to give the board status report as we go ahead and move on with this T-Mobile collaboration you're developing?
Sure, I certainly can, but I would like to remind the board that our very first, our second opportunity for CARES funding, the first one was the one that has a 2-year lifespan. The second one was the one that came from the city. And in that very first, and that was before we even started our remote learning program, that was our first go-to. We wanted to get the MiFi devices for families who were struggling with internet access. That was even before we had all of our buildings outfitted outside with Wi-Fi. It was our first thing. We did put it in our application. We were asked to remove it from our application, and probably because there was some confusion about the December date, whether or not we would continue to pay for those things past December. But I don't want this board to think that we left our families hanging and that we weren't thinking about them. We were absolutely thinking about them, and that was the first thing that we wanted to do with the CARES funding. And then we started adding spaces, you know, outside of our buildings for families who may not have had it in their homes. We had also been working with, as Amy said, T-Mobile and other companies to get that reduced rate for families who did not have access, and work with community centers to do that. So I can absolutely give you a little bit more on that, but I do think it is extremely important for folks to know that when we got that first opportunity to spend CARES money, that was one of the first things we put in our application.
I'm not doubting what I'm saying is if the money is needed, it could be diverted from regular funds because it's an important thing. It's an access to learning. Yes. So CARES fund is important, but they're general funds where the money could come. But going forward, you know, past is past. Going forward, personally, I like to see a status report to see where do we stand and how does we reduce that gap.
Ms. Morrison?
And we felt so strongly about it that was one of our legislative positions that I addressed when we met with our legislators, and that came from this board, that we can't do it alone. There has to be money available from not only the state, but from the city, because it is a community problem. And yes, we're getting these hotspot things, but that also comes with a monthly charge that we have to be able to maintain. I think it's $15 per hotspot. So it's not a one-time expense. It keeps reoccurring. And our pot's going to continue to get, and I agree it's a priority. It's been a priority for years. But it's going to take the city and the schools working together to make
I
that
don't
happen.
disagree with you, but the problem is 15 times 1,000 is $15,000. In scheme of things, that's a small amount when it comes to the learning for our students.
I would agree.
You know,
I-
so
I-
$15,000.
Point well taken and well noted, and we do know that this is being worked out, and we are thankful for the effort. School Board Member Morrison, you are correct about the city and schools, and interim city manager and other tech persons, and Amy Pugh and all of those folk are working all of those city-school relationships to solve, similar to what's happening in Martinsville and other places. So very good points brought out. Any further discussion, because we still have to hear the metrics and our return to play and the COVID-19 case update that Dr. Sinha is going to give us. All right. Thank you so much. We'll move to the next phase of our return to learn, return to play discussion.
Return to play. So early on when we were first affected by COVID-19, one of the things that we decided that we wanted to do was not deny our students the opportunity to not only have a rich academic experience, but also have access to the arts and electives. And if you remember, when we formed our Return to Learn team, one of the subcommittees was athletics and extracurricular activities. And we wanted to send a message to our community and to our students that we value that and that that's important. And I would say that was one of the hardest working teams. And they were also the pilot team. When we first brought students back, the first students to actually engage with us were students who were conditioning over this past summer. And from them, we learned a lot about COVID spread to make sure that we minimized it. We got to practice things with that. There's been a lot of conversation in the news about VHSL and the competition play, and I've invited our Return to Play team here to talk a little bit about what we would like to do here at LCS within the guidelines. It is extremely important to us as we look at our children and understand child development. And we know for some kids, this part of their LCS experience is the experience, right? For some kids, participation in athletics is very, very important, and we don't want to deny any of our children an opportunity. That being said, our focus is on our children, but we are also focused on safety. So we're trying to find that middle ground where we can safely participate in athletics while giving our children an experience and keeping everybody safe. So I have Ms. Jen Armstrong and ADs with us today to talk to you a little bit about Return to Play. And I'm going to turn it over to them. And maybe we'll start with Jen or Elizabeth. Don't know which one of you want to start.
Hi, y'all. My name is Elizabeth Mason-Cup. I'm the athletic director for EC Glass. I'll introduce all of us so that you are privy to everyone's names if you have not had the pleasure to meet any or all of us. Jen Armstrong is the first one to my right. She is the athletic trainer for EC Glass High School. Second is Chris Hallberg, who is the athletic trainer for Heritage High School. And then the one and only Dennis Knight, the athletic director of Heritage High School. My arch enemy and partner in a lot of things. And so we're just going to kind of hit the highlights and be able to answer questions for y'all, and we can all speak in a facet of things. But the first thing that is up is obviously winter sports. And to provide a little bit of context, December 7th is the first day of tryout/practice per the VHSL guidelines for basketball and sideline cheer. Following that, December 14th starts the remainder of all winter sports, which include wrestling, swim, and indoor track. December 21st is the first day of contest for all athletic events for winter season, and we will move into those. In doing so, we will obviously follow not only the LCS guidelines, but the Virginia High School mitigation guidelines for COVID-19. And in doing so, have created schedules that mimic that. The schedules are condensed, so we are completing a 60% schedule of what our normal athletic schedules would be in a normal season. We have also shrunk them down to where we are competing within the district and within the general Seminole district. I guess I should be more specific for sports. Competing with the Seminole district in terms of games and limiting our travel outside of the general area and sports where we can. And while we're speaking about winter, but to give you a little context in what I mean by where we can, at EC Glass specifically, we offer field hockey and lacrosse. Both of those teams are not a majority in the Seminole District or in our region. Therefore, a district does not exist for them to play. So to give you an example, in field hockey, I am the only school, or EC Glass is the only school to offer field hockey in the Seminole District and in Region 4D. Therefore, it goes without saying that there are no opponents within the Seminole District for them to play, which means we have to go outside of that parameter. Obviously, that is a fall sport, which will fall out of order this year and will follow winter sports, and then spring will come later with lacrosse, but to provide a little context. And I guess that's kind of the jump start for there.
And I guess just to add on to what Elizabeth said, kind of where we are now, just a little bit of where we've been. And so the VHSL, as you know, gave us our reopening of sports, and we were able to bring students back and have them participate in conditioning where we had cohorts, 10 in a group, no shared equipment, a lot of our risk mitigation, not in the building, not using locker rooms, everything's cleaned, all the parameters. And then from that, which we've been doing since July, they just released the second edition, the VHSL, which is the return to participation. And that was released on Tuesday, the 24th. And it is a 49-page document that you could peruse when you so feel. But every sport is listed with their own mitigation and general mitigation. And so those are what have to be done on game days for competition. Anyone that's not in competition will then be still under the phase 3 of reopening. So that's kind of where we were and where we're heading.
And I'll speak a little bit. I'm Dennis Knight, Heritage High School Athletic Director, and I'll speak, we talk about our kids being back since July. We've had somewhere, anytime we've had a conditioning day, we've had somewhere between 55 and 65 kids at Heritage High School, and I'm sure it's been the same in EC Glass. We have done over pretty close to 7,000 screenings of athletes coming every day. Right now, our athletes can quote you every single question. And so they've been really good about it. They've come and they've hustled and they've worked really hard. And, and as we moved along and got into the hybrid part or the school part, right now, our football team is partnering with the governor's school, and they're getting math tutoring once a week in the evenings. Our basketball coaches and all the schools, all the teams with winter sports are now doing study halls with the kids to make sure that they're staying up to date with their grades. And we look at moving forward with athletics and playing, as a Seminole District, we all agree that we will not have spectators. I know Elizabeth and I have worked really hard trying to find ways that we can stream the events to our parents. I mean, it's going to be strange, but right now I think we're both pretty set for the winter with basketball starting. Very hard to stream indoor track. I don't know how you can do it, so we're not. I know it creates a problem. Wrestling, swimming, I'm not sure how you can video stream, but we're going to try to do everything. I know both of us have partnered with the National Federation of High Schools. We're purchasing 2 what's called Pixelot cameras, but they won't be here until probably after the winter sports are done. But we'll have in the gym where we can do our volleyball matches. We'll have one at our fields at the schools where we can do JV football. If we're at Heritage, we can do boys and girls soccer, JV football, and those things like that. So we're working really hard to make sure that we can keep our community involved in our athletics. And I know somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was Ms. Laconich, we're not having spectators, and we're going to have to pay officials. I know I'm working every event to make sure that we can keep spectators out. I know we're going to have some irate parents that want to come in, but we're working really hard to make sure that we can get this off, maintaining safety for our student athletes. And we appreciate everything that Dr. Edwards and the school board has done to allow us to do what we're doing right now.
All right. Thank you so much. And I'm sure the board may have some questions for this great team. See Dr. Gupta's hand up.
I have a lighter note that for Heritage High School, the field lights you have on the football field, I hope those glory old days will come back when the lights are on. It's a beautiful display of our facilities. And I see from my house door, you know, I hope those days will come back. It was beautiful. And the serious question I had was, are our coaches getting full stipend during this pandemic, or is it being cut out?
Our coaches are getting paid, and you know, and I know like our football staff, they keep track of their hours, and I know my wrestling coach is doing the same thing, and I think we tell our coaches to keep track of their hours because some people are not really sure of if they're really making, you know, enough money to coach. But I mean, you know, I coached for 27 years, and probably if I made 50 cents an hour, I felt like I felt like I really wasn't doing a whole lot that year. So, but yeah, they're getting paid.
Morrison and then Ms. Evans.
I want to thank you all for all the work and time that you put into having this plan to get our student athletes back. It's a very important connection for school for all of them, and it would not be happening if you all had not done such an outstanding job, and I know the time that it takes for you all to do that. I am very concerned about the cost of the schools. Having worked in the high school for many years, we counted on money from big football games to fund a lot of our equipment, a lot of our things that the teams needed, and it's expensive. So I, as a board, this board member would like to, if there's something that we can do to help, we would like to, because it's very important for the secondary schools to have these opportunities. And it's expensive.
Very much so.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Ms. Evans?
I was just going to say, I love the idea of the heritage that you said y'all were doing study hall and the tutoring. And I don't know if maybe Glass is doing the same thing, but I think that's an amazing, smart thing to do. And then Ms. Morrison told me as I came in, I guess I can talk, that we were able to do the activity bus for middle school.
We're working, yeah.
We're working on it.
And I'm going to talk a little, because that's a metric. I'll talk a little bit about
so
that.
we'll get that. Okay, good. All right. So thank you.
And I know a lot of times we, people that aren't doing something always have suggestions, but I just wonder if you all reached out to some of the colleges regarding how to do the video streaming, especially like track or some of the other more complicated ones. Maybe they have devices or equipment and they're willing to send a student if they're not all gone home, or to try to help with that process.
So in my streaming hunt, shall I say, I started this a couple months ago, but you know, I talked with some of the people in the IT department in Austin Journey who does a lot of the videography, and I don't know if any of y'all, if you did not attend the Heritage Glass football game over the last year and 2 years, LCS streamed it for us, and it was kind of a test run to see how well that those things worked, especially over at the stadium. So I started talking with him and working on options that could be potential options and what could work also within our price bracket of what we can afford. And so right now, also in kind of conjunction with what some of the other Seminole District schools are doing, so that we could kind of attempt to be on the same platform to make it a little bit more user-friendly as we're all traveling and playing. One another is the fact that the NFHS Pixel-Lot was the easiest. What we did talk about with Austin and looking at a couple other options as well is providing that opportunity as we continue to move forward. Obviously, we're focused on winter right now because it's a little cart before the horse if we start talking about fall and spring, because we all know where we started with COVID and how it has evolved every step of the way. If we start making permanent plans for them, more than likely we'll be heaving it to the side momentarily. So what we looked at for spring was obviously the Pixel-Lot and NFHS was the best amount for getting the 2 cameras that it gives. It gives 2 to Heritage and 2 to Glass that can be permanently hardwired. And then working on our other locations like baseball and softball. So what we talked with Austin about and some of the other people in those departments, Mr. Mullins, was the ability to maybe use some of the IT equipment for the school year to figure out a way to do things at softball, baseball, other opposite locations. For us, we play soccer at the city stadium as well in the spring, so figuring out modes of doing those things. So we have looked at some of that. We have talked to some of the different people at some of the other colleges and what they have done, and just trying to take advice kind of from all facets, to be quite honest.
Any further questions? Dr. Nilles.
Yeah, I want to offer my personal thanks to everybody, especially on the athletics part. It's you know, we talk about relationships with students and teachers, and we don't really talk about relationships with the coaches and the students. And I know every one of you can point to any number of students that got through high school because of sports. And this is a real important part. It's not just a matter of having a winning team, it's the commitment and the dedication, the discipline that the students develop, the mentorship with the coaching, develop their character, and turn these kids into adults. So thank you, and I really appreciate the dedication. I know it's been a long, hard slog to get to this point. I admire some of the coaches for maintaining control instead of pulling the team together and saying we're going to play football. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else? Dr. Nilles so well said. I just want to say, Jen Armstrong, you're awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Chris and Dennis, for coming and sharing with us. We're thankful to have the superintendent that we have that works very closely with our local health officials. And as we know, in Virginia, there are many school divisions who have decided not to return and play for various reasons. And we're so grateful for our school division's investment in student athletes and even the non-athletic competitive activities that kids can participate in. So thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Give them a hand while they leave. All right, Dr. Edwards, continue us on.
Yes, so I too echo the thanks to that team and the coaches, because when we first started this, the balance between academics and athletics and when you're bringing kids in was a very difficult decision. And they came to me and said, please, can we just start conditioning at a time when we did not have kids in school for academics? So I was pretty tough on them to say that, you have to follow all the rules. Everybody's going to be looking at you. You are the pilot. And they did not and have not disappointed at all, ever. I mean, they are always 8 steps ahead of me. They're always thinking through what the next things we need to do. As I shared with you some of the documents that they put together, their screening protocols, we just used all of their things as we were developing what we needed to do for the academic side of it. So kudos to them, and anything that I can do to support them, I really want to, because they are committed to the kids and the program and the academics, as you heard, having our scholar athletes, as I like to call them. And I would be remiss if I also didn't give a shout out to the athletes, because you can imagine that what we hear is that it's not in school spread, it's activities outside that come in school. And these students know that, if we want to get to competition, we have to watch what we do outside of school as well as what we do inside of school. So kudos to them for really keep holding it tight. And even though we've had little cases here and there, we have not had outbreaks or anything near what we've seen in other places. So I'm very proud of them. I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm more excited about their can-do attitude, because they pretty much said, well, let's try, let's monitor it, and let's see. And that's where we are in terms of that, which ties all of this together, because on a daily basis, I get 2 questions. What does it take for you to shut down schools? What metrics does it mean to close schools? Everything is increasing. What does it mean to close schools? And then the other question is, what does it take to open up schools completely? What would you do? How do you do that? And often they're like 5 minutes apart. And within that, and we heard it tonight, that some will say things like, well, the WHO recommends 3 feet, so you could do this. And then others will say, but the CDC says the positivity rate should be below 5%, so what are you doing in school? There are a lot of confusing metrics, and I've said this a number of times, that no one of them can I be held to and say that one. And I will forcefully say there is no one that makes a decision. But there are multiple ones that we've been using, both with the conversation about athletics and the conversation about academics and in-person learning. So let me go over those a little bit. And Chuck, I don't know if you got my email to see if you could display some of that stuff up there. So I can take you into the head of Crystal and team as we look at decisions, and I'll tell you where some of our strengths are and some of our weaknesses. So there are about 10 different things that I look at all day long, every day, and probably in my sleep too. And some of those, I call them city metrics because they are Lynchburg city things. Some of them are LCS metrics because we're measuring what's going on inside of our schools. And then there are just other metrics that happen to come into play. So what Chuck is showing you is on the VDH website, which is specific for Lynchburg City. This is where I go. My computer wakes up to this. I see these colors in my sleep. We look through them. When people email me, they email me by color. They tell me we're in the red, what are you doing? Or they tell me we're in the orange, why aren't you doing? But you can see here that, and I'll tell you our first metric, what I look at is that first one that talks about the new cases per 100,000. And the recommendation was you should be under 200. Well, I've been monitoring this thing for a very, very long time. I don't know that we've ever been under 200. Certainly since we went to remote learning, we have not been under 200. When we made the decision to bring kids in pre-K to 2, we were not under 200. So we never hit green or anything in that first number that's trending where we are at 489. And I was on a call with Dr. Gately today with our region, Central Virginia region, and I think we're either the highest or the second highest in Lynchburg City. So I can't stress enough, if we want to keep schools open, we want our kids to participate in sports, it's not just about what I'm doing in schools. It's about what's happening outside of schools that's really important. So this is one of the metrics. I would love to see that 489 at least turn orange and get below 200. If not, get below 50. But that has not happened. If I'm realistic, that has not happened since the time I've been monitoring this one. The second city metric I look at is our positivity rate using PCR, which is a 14-day, nope, you're right there, the 8.6. The 14-day average of the positivity rate. And again, we are at, when we first were looking at remote learning, we were in 11.2. Anything up and above 10 is going to be red. And we decided to go remote learning. Then we monitored it, and I think I put this in one of my emails to you, or one of my weekly newsletters to you, where it was going down, down, down. We hit 5.1, and I said, all right, let's bring pre-K to 2 back in 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks later, we went back up to 6. So those folks who want to say, you didn't hit 5, what are you doing? I'm trying to plan, predict. We were going down, then we went back up, and now we're up and down and up and down. It is a very difficult job to do unless I had permission to do it the night before and just say, all right, tomorrow we're doing this, which works for no parent, no student, no teacher. So there has to be some lead time. But this rate, 8.6, has been trending up of late. And again, it is in the orange. Dr. Coleman mentioned that some divisions have decided that if these two, or these are two of the ones, if they are not in the green or the yellow, if they are orange or red in that high or moderately high area, that they aren't participating in athletics. We've been trending around this area, which is why my other metrics are important, and I'll get to those in a second. And then the third city metric that I use, which is a secondary indicator, is that first one is the percent new cases over 7 days. So the average of how many new cases are we getting over 7 days. And again, you can see our percent is in the red. So red's not good, green is good, red's not good. We are up, and again, trending up as we look at that. So if I were to just use these measures, these three, which are CDC enhanced from the VDH, by all means, we are in orange and red, that we might be making different considerations, not only for athletics, but for in-person learning. So it can't just be based on those three things alone. But We want to get those 3 things down. We do want the community to be going here in all of our efforts to get those things down. So let's talk about some LCS things that I look at as well when I'm considering school and athletics and things like that. So we have on our website, and Chuck, if you could bring up our website and click on our graph, which shows our daily number of cases, that would be great. So in an effort to be transparent, we started posting I think we started in September, our positive cases as of noon. So, and I know people email me all the time at like 12:05, 1:15. I know there's more than 3 cases, and I'm like, okay, they're gonna roll over into the next day. So all right, we're gonna get it. And just click the count archive for me so we can get the nice graph. And there you go. All right, so this is other data. So this is the first LCS metric that I use. And you can see on September 28th where we had 2 cases, then we had none, and I was feeling really good. Then we had, 3, then 1, then back to none, 3, 1, none. So I was enjoying those none runs. But now, if you notice, we're starting to trend upwards, even within LCS. We have not seen case-to-case spread in a school. So in other words, Dr. Coleman didn't give it to me, and I gave it to Dr. Nilles. That did not happen. What we're seeing is we all have our outside life, and we come in. Dr. Coleman brought his outside life, and it was positive. My outside life was positive, and your outside life was positive. And now we have 3 positive cases in the division, either with students or staff. So this is another metric that I look at. And then I look at our average, and I do it based on 5 days. So I look at our 5-day average of positivity. And I will tell you on November 16th, our 5-day average in LCS was 0.8 cases per day. And on November 30th, it's 2.6 cases per day. So again, we're trending up a little bit, which means, and it's not school-to-school spread, it's bringing my outside life inside, so we need to tighten up the outside life. So that is another metric that I use. We look at both student absenteeism and staff absenteeism, not just for positive cases, but for quarantine. Because if I do bring my outside life in and I'm within 6 feet, 15 minutes or more, so on and so forth, Mike might have to be quarantined even though he's not positive. James might have to be quarantined even though he's not positive. Now I've taken out our team, and that's considered an absenteeism. So I look at those metrics, and one of the things that we stress with our staff is don't get comfortable. Stay masked up. And sometimes we got all comfortable and we're like, I've been around you for a while, I don't need my, yes you do. We tell teachers and their assistants who are often in the same room, please keep your mask on, take it off when you need to take it off, but don't get comfortable because we don't want to take out a team. So what happens when that happens? Well, that happened. If you look at our earlier numbers, they weren't affecting us as much. And then we had recently one big one that took out a couple folks, but those folks were in multiple rooms, in close contact with multiple students. So we took out a couple students as well. I think about 60 kids, 3 teachers and 60 kids, somewhere in that metric. But we could still function. So I didn't close the school. We quarantined, and we probably, and kudos to Ann and LaTanya and Andrea, that team works hard on contact tracing. If education doesn't work for them, they can work for the medical field. Because they do a great job of getting everything out quickly and efficiently and keeping me informed. But we will probably over-quarantine to be cautious. And what does that do? That sends fear into people's minds because then they'll see the parking lot's empty. What's going on here? We have an outbreak when it's probably due to a quarantine. But it is a metric that I monitor every single day. How many people do we have out for quarantine? Where are they? Is it spread out amongst the division, which right now it pretty much is, although I'm gonna get to one. Or is it isolated in a school? And if it's isolated in a school, do we get to a point where, as I've seen in other counties where they shut down a grade level or shut down a pod or shut down a school. So if we can't function, if I don't have enough staff to function, we will have to shut down a school. I will make that call. When we do flu season, usually that's about 30% of staff, but since we haven't hit that, I'm trying to measure that with COVID, and I'm in constant conversation with LaTanya team and principals. Here's a big one, transportation. And transportation is gonna affect academics and athletics too. And I need to tell you the hierarchy. So the way we prioritize transportation is academics first, athletics second, and activity bus third. All right, it's important for everybody to know that that's the metric. So if we have a shortage of bus drivers, academics first, getting kids to and from school, athletics at the high school level second, and then activity buses. So that if you do that in reverse order, if we really don't have enough buses to do them all, the activity buses at the middle school will be the first thing that will probably go. And then you work your way up to that. Hopefully we won't get there. But we do monitor the number of bus drivers and bus aides, transportation personnel that we have, because they are essential for every school. It's different than if, you know, a few teachers at a school are, you know, affected. But if transportation is affected, we have a big problem. And right now, we're not at critical, but we're at eyebrow raised with our transportation department. And it's a combination of both positive tests and quarantine that has us looking at, okay, kudos to that department, though. They have done a great job of covering and making sure that we've, you know, brought kids to school. We do have some backup plans which aren't the best because they require a double run, right? If you're short staffed, you got to go back and get some kids and things like that. So we do have that in play. But that is another metric that I use. I count transportation separate from full staff just because transportation can impact the whole division. Other things that I'm looking at is space on buses. Obviously, 22 seats on the bus. Until I get direction from the CDC that says we no longer need 6 feet, I'm sticking with 6 feet. So I know what the World Health Organization said, and I've, you know, talked with Dr. Gately. We are all following CDC. We are sticking with 6 feet. So I am no more inclined to bring all the chairs back in this room so I can have an audience than I am to do it in my classroom. So with regard to phase 4, if that goes, if the 6 feet requirement goes, that speeds up phase 4 real quick and easy, because I can get more kids in classrooms and so on and so forth, more kids on the bus, hopefully, if that happens. Right now, I don't see that happening anytime soon when we're looking at our numbers going up. In my book here, which is what I keep kind of my notes in addition to just the trends that you see here, each building principal went through each classroom space and gave me a COVID max count. So we can walk through a building and I can tell based on the furniture that's there that can't come off the walls and the space, how many children I can fit in this room. So we did some, you know, there was a square footage calculation, but they actually went in the rooms and looked at what they have. Some of that is based on desk size too, because you saw a lab classroom. You're not moving those lab tables out. All right, you can't just pack them in there. So we're limited by that. So I do have that when I'm looking at bringing kids back. Going to your achievement gap question, part of what we're trying to do is now that we know how many seats are available, we're prioritizing calling kids who aren't doing well, right? They chose remote, but they aren't doing well. We're trying to re-choose for them and say you need in person because you're not surviving in remote world, and we need you to come in for this class, or we need you to come in for this grade. That's a little easier at second grade because that seat's available all day long, but when you look at high school, my third period seat might be available, but my fifth period seat might not, or my fourth period seat. So it becomes a little complicated, and you get things like the gentleman talked about where kids are in different cohorts. And if you have a very specialized high school schedule where you're taking singletons, you might be in different cohorts than your little sibling who's a 9th grader who's in a different cohort. So we tried our best to minimize that as much as possible. But there are some cases where it would require a schedule change, and courses aren't available that the child may want, or at the lower levels, if they have siblings at the lower levels, there's no space. So that's another metric that we use. And then, of course, any special circumstances. So Paul Monroe fire, special circumstance that required that we shut down that particular school. So I wanted the board to understand that there are numbers that play into what we do and decide to do, and they have various effects depending upon where they are. So a 30% across the division might not be as bad as 30% in one school, which would shut down a school. The bus driver thing is very real. It is a very real metric, as is our nutrition staff as well, because we have staff that are highly compromised in those two areas. So we do have to monitor that right now. For phase 4, so getting back to the phase 4 question, the first easy thing to do is to say, we've removed the 6 feet requirement, which opens up the space on the bus. Transportation is not an issue. We can still do the full range of classes from the time that we do it for the 6-hour day that we do it. That would have to be a CDC has decided, and there's evidence behind that that's not an issue. That's not a Crystal thing. That's a bigger thing than Crystal there. That's number one. Number two, if that doesn't happen and there's still a request for multiple days, let's just say 4 days right now, because I still think we need to provide teachers and staff time for planning, because this is very different than what they did. We would have to blow up the model, all right? And we've kind of talked about this, and let me just say this to my staff who are watching. We are not blowing up the model tomorrow. I do not want rumors going out there that said, I heard the superintendent say this is what we're doing. We are not making changes right now. We are hypothetically talking to the board for the purpose of answering the question about phase 4 down the road. I need to be so clear about that, because I don't want emails tomorrow, and I don't want teachers panicking saying, I'm just figuring out how to do this, and you're going to do something different. But the model would have to be different if we still have math requirement, 6 feet separation, and 15 minutes, which really means we have to look at how we use time. I don't anticipate we're getting a slew of bus drivers, so we're still going to be limited by the number of buses that we have, and I don't imagine we're getting a lot more building space. So if we're not getting more bus drivers or more building space, what we have to do is use the time different, which means we may have to shrink a 6-hour day to a 4-hour day and offer multiple sessions, which means everybody's schedule changes. Now, one of the things that I hear from parents is, don't change my schedule, don't change my teachers, don't change. A phase 4 change without 6 feet going away and without the bus restriction going away requires a change of possibly teacher, possibly schedule, possibly time of day that you would be reporting to school. There really isn't another way to do it with those restrictions. So this board, this community needs to understand when we say things like that, we often don't think through the consequences of, but we also want to keep our same teacher. We also want to keep our same schedule. We also want to get out of school at 1:35. Well, 1:35 might be 4:35 if we had to do multiple shifts. Now, my team is always working on possibilities A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. They are always doing those kinds of things. But we're also mindful of the mindset, the social emotional health of our staff. And I will tell you on behalf of my staff, there is nothing more frustrating than to get to a point where you have been so stressed trying to do this and you feel like maybe you're getting it and you think your boss is about to change it. And I don't want my staff feeling that way right now, because as you've heard from the people who are here, they're doing a great job. They're into home visits, phone calls, and all kinds of support for their students and families. So I do not want that to be there. And Jamie, I'm counting on you not to report it that way, so that we do not panic, folks. But for the purpose of, is there phase 4 thinking? Yes, there is phase 4 thinking. Has that been communicated to staff? No. Has staff sat down and mapped out a schedule? No, because staff is doing what staff is doing right now, taking care of my kids is what they're doing right now. And that's what I want them to do now. I have other staff that are working with me on some preliminary things in terms of that. So that's where we are. We anticipate if we don't come out of this, if these numbers keep trending up, so we're in the winter, in the flu season, so it's going to get a little complicated with kids who are just absent, staff who are just absent because of cold and flu versus COVID, on the spring end, that if it doesn't change, we will definitely need a change for the summer session / fall, starting the next school year. And then, of course, there's the question of the vaccine, right? It's going to be available. I was on the call today with Centra, Dr. Gately, and they gave us a lot of good information about that and the prioritization of the vaccine, how much is coming to Virginia. I think the stats was there's 300 healthcare workers who are priority number 1, and we're getting 70,000 vaccines. So they're not coming to LCS teachers and staff in the immediate near future, which means this 2020 school year. Where that might fall in the spring or anywhere up to June is what I heard, is a different story. And even that, as a board, gives us a lot to think about because vaccines aren't mandatory. And that poses some questions about schooling because folks are saying we're not coming to school until a vaccine is available. Some folks are assuming that it's going to be mandatory for students, mandatory for staff. Right now, there's no discussion about that. It's experimental, so you can't make it mandatory. So it's other factors for us to also consider when we move forward. But my team is even thinking through what does that look like in terms of, when we get to that area there. So yes, there are metrics. I do want all that red to go down to orange, orange to go to yellow. I would be happy. I'm not even begging for green. I would be happy with yellow. Take that. I would be happy with our data start to trend down in terms of what we're seeing in schools. I am concerned about transportation. I'm concerned about our transportation workers because even as you can imagine, if some of them are quarantined, that means the rest of them are picking up the slack. So they're working harder and taking on more than what they originally had during this time. So it's something that we're keeping an eye on. And again, we have to have that care and concern for not only our students and families, but our staff as well. So now,
thank you, Dr. Edwards, for the characterization of our situation. And as board members would raise questions, we do want you to know that we wanted this depth to take place tonight in December. This board's head, our heads are not buried in the sand, nor is our superintendent. We're dealing with real dynamics. We're talking about the good, the bad, the gory, the glory, and trying to deal with it appropriately. Dr. Brennan.
Dr. Edwards, I know you have a long time till you reach your midlife crisis for your career, but when you make that point, if you want to go into infectious disease, please give me a call. Unbelievable, that knowledge and the information. But a couple of things. One is I think you're exactly right about the numbers as far as trying to use those numbers. I mean, they fluctuate so much. And as you said, we've never been out of the red zone for the number of cases, and the numbers are going to continue to change, hopefully for the better, and you have to predict so far ahead. So I think what you're balancing is exactly right as far as what you're using for local data and looking at school data. And then the other comment I make is that I'm part of that discussion about the vaccines, and there is this amount that's coming to the state, some will go to Centra. What's interesting is that there are different phases, and phase 1 is going to be that essential worker or the essential person. Phase 2 is going to be the in-person teachers. So they are in that next phase, and it'll probably be coming sooner to them than it will be to the other public. There are all the issues about who will take the vaccine, who won't. It probably won't be mandated for anybody because it's a new vaccine. But because of that, if you think that maybe half the people, half physicians, staff may not take it, there may actually be vaccine available, we hope. So there is maybe, as Dr. Fauci says, some light at the end of the tunnel, but I certainly agree with your data and what you're doing, and thank you so much for all that work.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Dr. Sinha and then Ms. Morrison.
And I hope, Dr. Brennan, you'll remind them that it's not just teachers that have contact with our students, but our nutrition workers and our bus drivers. And they need to be equally prioritized along with our teachers. You know, we focus so much on teachers, which is a good thing, but people forget about all these ancillary services that are there that have contact. Second, I want to thank you for being very conservative and following CDC guidelines. Where we are distancing, we do have masks. Just to illustrate how quickly things can go awry, my mother's in an assisted living facility. There they can't distance. They can take precautions, but they have close contact, frequent contact. 14 days ago, they had 2 cases. They have 40 now.
Oh, goodness.
That's how quickly it can get out of hand.
Oh, goodness.
When you can't or do not follow a lot of the protocols. And they did have protocols in place, restrictions on visiting, masking, and all that. So I am in no hurry for us to push those boundaries until CDC says it's safe. And another commentary, the vaccines, people need to remember they're for adults. A vaccine for children is a ways off. And finally, as Dr., what's his name? Gately. You know, he mentioned that flu season in the southern hemisphere wasn't so bad this year because everybody's wearing masks. So let's hope that there's a silver lining with mask wearing, that we don't have much of a flu season.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Ms. Morrison?
And I think something that we know happened over Thanksgiving is that as much as we asked people to maintain the social distancing and the mask, there were people who traveled and there were people who did not do that. So in the next 2 weeks, we can expect a change in those numbers, hopefully not. But one of the things that I think would be very helpful, we heard tonight that the majority of the parents would choose face-to-face instruction. But when I looked at the numbers at all our schools, it was not the majority of the parents who chose face-to-face instructions. At the high school, it looked like it was about 1/3 to 1/2. And I think that's also true of the elementary schools. If I'm wrong in that,
You have a little bit higher percentage at the elementary schools, and each school is a little
different, right. And also, how many students are actually using our buses? That number would be, because we see follow buses sometimes, because I'm doing carpooling and there might be 1 or 2 students on the buses. Now, that may go up as more students choose to come back to school, but I think it's also worth watching. And when you talked about that schedule change, that if we looked at, instead of getting out at 1:30, we might have a 12:30 to 4:30, that might give us some more information about how we make that transportation work. I had a question. If I'm the teacher in a classroom and I am maintaining social distance and I am wearing my mask and the kids are all 6 feet apart and they're wearing their mask and I have a test positive, do we automatically put those kids into quarantine? Even though they are social distance? Okay.
Yeah. As a precaution, because as Kim said, it could get out of hand really quickly. And then, we monitor that and make sure that kids are a little easier because they can still do the remote learning. It's harder when it's teachers. So.
Well, and I think that's an important part for the community, that when we have a group of 36 kids who are out, it's because we are concerned about safety.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that everyone's given the opportunity to be safe and not to expand it. And I think that's a point that's sometimes missed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. And in your statements, you are suggesting that we have accuracy in reporting of information. I think that's important. Thank you. Other questions from the board? Dr. Carter.
I just want to say that I'm very appreciative of the way that you and the staff have really looked at this return to learn, that it's really, you're looking at all the different factors and really being methodical and intentional in how you're looking at the attendance and everything. And even just to hear how much, like Mrs. Reeves' team is doing and then the IRTs are doing, we're trying to reach every student. That's very commendable, and thank you for that. No one is perfect, and we're doing our best, and I think we really are trying to reach every child and see what the needs are and get those things on board, and so just thank you for that.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. We want to hear all views of the board, so whatever your views are, any further discussion on this matter? Dr. Nilles.
You know, I appreciate Dr. Edwards' comment. My name keeps getting thrown out as to what metrics we're using, and the comment was just an off-the-cuff comment at the time, just from the standpoint of what are we looking at? And I appreciate what Dr. Edwards is sharing, and I think we're all watching the incidence of COVID on our own, certainly, and certainly I've been doing my own, and if you look at it, pick whatever average you want, but the average new cases in Lynchburg, if you look at like 7-8 days, has been pretty consistent since August. There have been a couple of spikes at the end of August and late September, but it came back down. But it's going up. It really is, and it's encouraging that the cases that the school system's seeing are coming from outside. You know, and you have to be extremely vigilant, and it's a lot of work on the part of whoever's doing the contacting, tracing, to backtrack and then make contact with people. And it's really important. You know, people need to adhere to the quarantine guidance. It's best for all concerned. So.
Thank you, Dr. Nilles. Ms. Evans?
And I was going to save this till the end for board comments, but I think it's really important for the community. We had two different people comment tonight on opposite ends of the spectrum, of some people saying open 5 days a week and other people saying we need to be all virtual. So I think the community needs to keep in mind we're doing the best we can. It's a massive amount of information that we're taking in and trying to figure out. And just because we're not opening 5 days a week does not mean you're not being heard. We do hear you as a board. We're looking at all these numbers. And I think the community needs to remember, we may not pick exactly what you would like us to do, but every person on this board is picking what they feel the best is for Lynchburg City as a whole, not your one child. We have teachers, we have cafeteria workers, bus drivers, students, that we've got to take care of everybody. And I think when we have people come in and give an opinion and it's all or nothing, it's very unrealistic. And I just want the community to understand this is a massive amount of information that we're taking in every week and trying to make the best choice. And it's not going to be an all or nothing. And so I think if that's still where you're leaning toward an all or nothing, you're never going to be happy because it's not going to happen. And I think that's important to understand.
Thank you, Ms. Evans, for your comments. Mr. Harvey.
Thank you. I've been sitting here this meeting and I've really been listening. And I would just simply like to say, if you receive a paycheck from Lynchburg City Schools, I want to honestly and from the depth of my heart say thank you. You know, as Ms. Evans has mentioned, we had two completely diverging views from our community at the start of our meeting. In this meeting, I've heard us as board members hold people accountable, and we should. That's our job. We've asked for validation of what's being done. And the reason why I say thank you to anyone who receives a paycheck, because I appreciate everything that Dr. Edwards has just said. And I appreciate everything that each one of these individuals said. And I appreciate everything that every one of these individuals and Dr. Edwards represents within our system. Because we are asking these people to be superheroes. I mean, as I was sitting here hearing the Wi-Fi conversation, not only were you asking them to be superheroes, we're asking them to provide utilities. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, there is a tremendous amount of obligation, of responsibility, of things that we should never have to ask teachers to have to do, never have to ask bus drivers to have to do, nutrition workers to have to do. I mean, we are asking our administration to solve problems that I believe that the entire Pentagon could not solve. So I just simply want to say thank you for all that you're doing, and don't let the comments from our community, comments on Facebook, comments even from within ourselves, our board, to in any way demoralize what you're doing for LCS. So just simply thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Well said. Is there any other board member that would like to offer a statement at this time? I know that Dr. Sinha has a part that she wants to share with us. I guess you could go ahead with that.
Okay. Well, I have the update. Just a note, I did find a couple of minor mistakes on my November 17th, so I issued a revision, and that's in your packet for today. As Dr. Nilles noted, cases are going up. We shattered our record for the week ending November 28th with 223 new cases. Now, that could be artificially high because word is people who wanted to travel got themselves tested out of an abundance of caution, and so it's possible that that's why it's up. It could be artificially low because it was a slow reporting week. There wasn't much reporting on Thursday and Friday, and usually there isn't a lot on weekends. It's up and down. So I don't know how to interpret that, just that any way you slice it, it's 50 cases higher than our previous high, which was a few weeks ago. November accounted for 1/4 of all our COVID cases in the city to date. So that's that exponential increase. Positivity rates are up, but they're not over 10, so they're not where they were when we were in August, so that's still encouraging. And then just a note, I've been reporting the UVA models, but they keep changing what they show. And then I wanted to show the low, middle, and high, but they don't scale them the same, so they're misleading in terms of how the lines look. So I started reporting just their projection of number of cases per week and reporting that for the full horizon. So this goes to January 17th, I believe, and where they expect us to be. And well, we're already well above those in terms of cases per week this week. So that's a little bit concerning. And as everybody noted, travel, social gatherings, church services, even family gatherings present greater opportunity for risk. There's a lot of virus swirling around there. I implore the community to, I see posts of people lamenting how awful Christmas is going to be this year because they can't be with relatives, and I get it, but it's one Christmas. Just please, it's worth, that sacrifice over the risks involved. So for the good of the community and our schools to keep them open, I think we're in for a tough few months as we get over this hump of winter, and then hopefully things will look really promising beginning in February or March for us. But right now they're looking pretty dire. So
Thank you so much, Dr. Sinha. And I think we can be okay to move right on through the rest of what we have to do for tonight, but I do want to pause to just take 30 seconds to make my little contribution to this conversation. And I first want to say to you, Dr. Edwards, thank you so much. It is just unbelievable how you are handling the weight of this unprecedented dynamic. It's amazing. Everything that the board requests of you, agenda prep, meetings, you own it. And you're bringing your team together to address these things with professionalism, leading with care, sensitivity to every dynamic. I would like to indicate my support of Dr. Gupta's concerns about the opportunity gap, achievement gap. That's not something for us to take personal just for Lynchburg. It's all over the country, and the studies are out. So it's good to hear Dr. Jordan realize that we're not trying to paint some rosy picture that everything is okay with instruction and that somehow this board just thinks that everything is just wonderful. Wherever the problems are, we've articulated them tonight. We have a better understanding about return to learn, return to play, return to participation, mitigation dynamics, and let's move forward and do what's best for kids. All right, that'll move us now to H2. And Dr. Jordan, if you could come on in and help us to get through this high school program of studies tonight. This is for action.
Hello, are you all still here? No, in all seriousness, thank you for the sincere conversation about what everyone in LCS is doing. And I think that what we're feeling right now, we had a sense of adrenaline in March and April and even through the summer, but we're getting tired. And the amount of superhero work that everyone is doing is just amazing. Every day we hear something even more amazing about people going above and beyond, but we're tired. We're collectively tired. So thank you for appreciating our teachers, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, everybody. We're here to talk about high school program of studies, which seems like kind of a strange thing to talk about on a heavy night. I have Maria Yeager here, instructional supervisor. She led this committee, this team of many high school administrators, central office staff, counseling directors, counselors, teacher input. This is an undertaking to make sure that we have this manual for next school year prepared in time for course selection for our high school students in, the early part of second semester. I feel a little bit like a squirrel in the middle of the road because we don't know what's going to happen, and it's easy to say, should we just hold off? Should we push pause? But if we push pause, then that means that course selection doesn't happen. It means that we don't get things printed. So we're bringing this to you not in the consent agenda because we think we need to talk about some things first, but we're bringing this to you in full transparency. We're going to have to amend this. We're going to have to tell you some more as we get there. We know we want to have a remote academy. We know there will be SOL flexibility. We know that there will be changes on the horizon. We just don't know what they are. We don't think that anything will narrow. If anything, our courses will open up if we have a remote academy, if we have more opportunities for sequential electives. And I know, Ms. Evans, you brought up sequential electives last time. So we know that a lot of these topics are out there, but we're bringing this to you tonight because we need to have something in place for second semester in order to start course selection. The biggest topic of conversation is about course weights. Mm-hmm. When the counseling directors came forward, there was talk in committee about course weights. And we want to at least acknowledge this. If we need to table it, we are certainly fine with tabling that part until we have bigger conversations about grading, the exam policy. If we need to go back in committee, we can do that. But we just want you to know that there is talk, not from parents, not from students, but from LCS educators that, I'll give you an example. Students are graduating from CVCC with an associate's degree, and we don't give a 5.0 for all of those courses. And it's just making us think about how are we awarding course weights. And, Maria and I have sat and talked for hours about this topic. We've talked to localities around us, and most people are doing something different than we are, but lots of people are awarding more credit for more courses. And it's really what courses are going to transfer. We've talked back and forth with the STEM Academy. We've talked back and forth with every regional program we can think of, and more courses are transferable. And if they're potentially transferable, some universities don't take the engineering course, but another one will. And we had a really long conversation the other day. Who determines rigor? You know, we in a blanket way give 5.0 to AP or CVGS. You know, so it's part of a bigger conversation. And if we're not ready to have that conversation, or we want to have it when we talk about grading, or we want to have it when we talk about exam policy, we're fine with that. But we wanted you to know that it didn't come from us, but it came out of committee.
Can I ask a quick question?
All right, before Ms. Evans asks her question again, this item was pulled from the consent agenda around the issues that was just mentioned, so we are looking for the pleasure of the board tonight concerning this matter. Ms. Evans?
So is it according to what class you take as dual enrollment to whether it's weighted as 5? Like there are some classes that you could take at CVCC that would just be considered a 4? 4.5, and some of them are considered 5 based on what the class is. And that's based on EC Glass saying we think this class is worth 5 and this class is worth 4.5?
It's based on precedent from program of
Past,
studies
okay.
in years past.
Okay.
And we can show you if you want to take it back to committee, if you want to take it off if you want to take that part off the table tonight, we can get into details of what other folks are doing, what's out on other the websites, just to see what's kind of trending right now. But dual enrollment is a bigger topic than it was 10 years ago. When I was a classroom teacher, I taught AP, and AP was the standard. AP was the measure. And I really don't want to get up here and talk about what classes are rigorous and what are not, but are we offering our students the same opportunity for course weights as some other places around us? How does it impact them when they're going for regional scholarships? How does this, it's a bigger conversation, and if we're okay with not having it tonight, but we just want you to know that it came out of committee, and we had lots of pretty deep conversations as a result.
Chair, stay with you, Ms. Evans. You have another question?
So my question is this: if this is not going to be decided tonight, can you send us what came out of those discussions, like what y'all are thinking, where we think this is going, or what? Because I definitely think it needs to not be discussed tonight, and we need to hear what y'all thought and what your thinking on that is.
Sure.
Before we move on, because Dr. Carter wants to speak and Ms. Morrison wants to speak, but Dr. Edwards, what part of this do we have to pass tonight, or do we?
If they can manage the delay, I think the delay was on the printing and getting it out and having school counselors have something to use to have conversations with students and families, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to bring it to you, but bring it to you with full knowledge of, we're going to bring it to you, but we might be adding sticky notes to this thing to amend it as we get closer to where counselors would be working with kids. So.
Can we somehow, sorry to interrupt you, can we somehow, if you're okay with everything but the course weights, can we somehow say that we are approving all changes but the course weights? I don't know if that's an option.
We've heard you so far, Dr. Jordan. I'm going, Dr. Carter, then Ms. Morrison, please.
So I think I heard you correctly say that how the determination was made to which one was 5 and which one was 4.5 and which one is more rigorous than the other. So if we look at this through an equity lens, then it should be that the dual enrollment classes, if they are as the same amount of rigor, would also be afforded a higher rate.
Ms. Morrison?
Well, I agree about the course weight being taken out of it. I know that counselors need to have the course content and the sequential course projections so that they can start. This is a lengthy process. I also is the exam policy also one that we want to take out?
The exam policy is not in the program of studies, but we know.
But that's a separate conversation.
Yes,
So
but it kind of feeds into the same conversation about weights, grading.
All right, so the only thing would be the course weight.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Any other?
I'm good with that.
Dr. Sinha.
I'm sorry, I had to step out. I have a small bladder, but
Yeah, we understand.
and a long meeting. So these weights, are they primarily tied to college prep, college track courses, or?
In the past, I would say AP and governor school, now that dual enrollment has become more of a force in the high school scene. You're seeing dual enrollment become part of the conversation, but when we talk to some other divisions, and again, we don't have to do what other people are doing, it's just worth noting that others around us are more kind of inclusive in their course weights. Anything that could be transferred for college credit, and AP is not guaranteed. I taught AP for 10 years, and very rarely do you get actual course credit for an AP course because it's not a moneymaker for the institution.
The reason I asked for clarification on that is, have you or are you already working with area registrars of how they would view those courses? So for example, I work at Sweetbriar, and I know that a lot of our incoming first-time freshmen come in with loads of credits because they've done AP, they've done dual enrollment. I mean, they're practically sophomores, some of them. And then if they're in early college, they're juniors when they're coming in as first-time freshmen, if you will. So that might be helpful in terms of determining rigor, knowing what they are looking for. And I can't speak for other registrars. I know they're really busy, but that might be helpful to just,
And I do know that came up in the conversation when the high school counseling directors were saying, we know this course is accepted here. We know that, a lot of our students, if they're leaving early college, they're leaving with an associate's degree, and they're at least somewhere in their sophomore year as far as transferable credits. But we know it's a big conversation. So if we don't want to have that part of the conversation tonight, we do want it to be on your minds so we can really dig into it soon.
Ms. Morrison?
I would like to move approval of the program of studies with the exemption of the course weight part of it.
Second.
Motion is on the floor by Ms. Morrison
Got to move you closer.
and seconded by Dr. Carter. And I'm going to ask Ms. Morrison to restate her motion, and then we'll move from there.
Oh, gosh. Make a motion to approve the proposed program of studies with the exemption of the course weight removed from the program of studies for a further discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. That has been seconded. And any discussion or questions concerning the motion, Mr. Harvey?
Yes, I apologize. I was waiting to the course weighting discussions were over, but when I look at the chart that we have been given, I'm seeing a lot of name changes, and my focus is drawn immediately to the career tech programs. And I'm seeing where we're going from building trades to simply carpentry. I'm seeing where we're going from change technology of robotics design to drafting. Some of these course change numbers, it says the reason why we're doing this because of certifications, because of teachers. I happen to know the robotics design class being taught by Ms. Hanson. She is an incredibly sharp teacher that teaches a very rigorous course. And I've seen some amazing things come out of there. And I could imagine if I were a student and I had the choice, and this is kind of my profession, drafting, but if I have the choice of taking robotics design or drafting, which one I'm going to choose? So I just question, have we really thought about some of these course change names, and the rationale of why we're changing some of these courses? Just don't want to push this through too quickly.
Dr. Edwards or Dr. Jordan, could you please respond to that very pertinent question?
I will do my best. Dr. Bryant has explained this to, and help me out here, Maria, if you remember differently. We had a federal review last year, so he was just talking about federal review of CTE, and there's a very important report called the iPal report. It is not an Apple product, but it is something that comes out in the spring, and we are dinged for having teachers outside of their certification, and we had to update course names and course codes based on state changes. So some of those are state changes and some of those are outside of the certification. And I don't want to speak for Dr. Bryant, but oftentimes you're renaming the course to make sure that the person's certification matches that, but what they're able to offer in the course is like still some of the robotics. Or do you remember anything specifically about that?
Correctly, I think it has to match the changes at the state level and the certification of the teachers.
And I agree with that, because that's some of the discussions that we've had in our CTE committee meetings. But with those name changes and course changes, what criteria that you need to meet for that course is then specified. And so that does, in fact, change the course. So I want to make sure that we get that we're changing. I mean, I'll use, like, because I'm intimately familiar with our building trades program over the past 20 years. Changing from building trades to carpentry is really funnels that course down to one trade. So you've gone from masonry, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, project management, all of those certifications down to carpentry.
All right, so that's a human resource talent issue.
Yes, I would say, and on our December work session, we're going to be talking about human resources. And as Dr. Jordan said earlier, we don't want you to think everything is rosy and that everything works out well. And I think when Dr. Bryant was here, he spoke a little bit about the CTE evaluation and monitoring, and I think he might have said we were dinged for licensure. And usually when you're dinged, you get a corrective action plan, and you're told you have to do some things that we have to comply, and then they come back and look to see that you actually did what they told you to do. So I think, and I can't speak specifically because I'm remembering, I'm seeing the corrective action plan in my head. I don't have it in front of me to tell you which specific items, but I'm hinting that that might be one of those items that have to line up perfectly from the CTE side. I do know from the HR side, and we'll talk a little bit about this when we do our work session, that's not the only area where we're seeing this need for cleanup. And I think we need to be understanding of passion and certification, because passion could have me teach something. Certification could have me not, even though I'm very good at it. And I love it, and kids love it. But if the VDOE is saying you have to correct this has to be a certified teacher, we have to do that. That doesn't mean we can't get creative with passion within our certification.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. And Mr. Harvey, thank you for the precision of your question, and it's one of those matters we'll have to get to. Did you have something else you wanted to say, sir?
Yeah, I guess again, I don't want this to just simply be passed, because it's not a weighted credit issue. Dr. Edwards, I completely understand exactly what you're saying about the certifications of the teachers, but another corrective action is that we could work with the teacher to get that accreditation, that certification. That's what we've done in the past, specifically with a previous instructor of that program. We've increased some certifications, and I get that it's a talent piece, but I would like to, before we just simply, vote tonight and change all this, that there's a little more thought. Well, I shouldn't say a little more thought, but more consideration given to how that impacts us.
I want to go to Ms. Evans and Ms. Morrison, but
I just have a quick.
Ms. Evans, that's why I raised the question about what do we need to do tonight? What are those time-sensitive dynamics? Mr. Harvey, your point is well taken, and there may or may not be a need for us to amend or go forward. Ms. Evans and then Ms. Morrison.
That was my question. What part of this is, because it is critical for the high schools to get this passed. The kids have got to pick their classes. Not that career tech is just as important as every class, but if that's the area that we're focused on, perhaps we can pull something out of that too to say we need to discuss it, or maybe we can put something in here that still lets us get this passed, because they've got to have this to do their placements for next semester. So I guess the question to me comes down to, what are you comfortable with saying, we can use this, but like we pulled out the weighted grades to be able to talk about that later. But I do think if we don't get something done tonight for the counselors to use with the students, we're going to be very behind, and it's going to cause a problem.
And I'm not sure how I would answer that, because again, a majority of these are career tech programs, and so I'm not. To reply to your question, I'm not.
Let's come back to that where necessary. Ms. Morrison and then Dr. Gupta.
And I had that specific question about carpentry, and I sent it in and got a response that carpentry 1 and 2 would be taught simultaneously, so it would be more like a block. And they even added carpentry 3 because the state is putting that out there as one of the things that they required. So the question was posed to me, and I sent it in and got the answer. But carpentry was one that I looked at as well because someone brought it to my attention. But I think I agree with Mrs. Evans that this is very important for student scheduling, and it's very difficult right now. Even getting it to students and parents, and the explanation of some of these are so difficult. How do you do a block and you're not in school and that kind of thing? So.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. And I know Dr. Carter would like to speak also, Dr. Gupta, but I do want to remind the board we have a motion on the floor, which has been seconded, and it will have to be voted up or down unless there is some friendly amendment or motion to amend the main motion that is before us. Dr. Gupta, more discussion than Dr. Carter.
I just wanted to say what you just said. The motion is on the table, so.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Carter.
Well, I just want to say, this is a yearly, this is done yearly, so that means that the teachers I'm sure they were aware that they needed certain certifications, and he was applauding one teacher that received all these certifications. But you can't, if you're not certified in that, then I don't see how we can address this any other way but that the way that has already been addressed by having the change in the names. And I saw that and noticed that quite a few were changed. But I guess if they're not certified or where they need to be, then we can only address provide the classes that really they are certified in.
So I can confirm that that is indeed in the corrective action plan, that we were indeed cited for that and have to make corrective action within a timeline. So the timeline to get certified might not be within the timeline that this corrective action had to take place.
Dr. Edwards, we are moving to use some of our Title II funding, which is directly related to making sure we're building capacity of our staff, fits right into the shift to HR, and we are forming some study groups for teacher praxis, because sometimes it's not as simple as just getting a certification. This is a in-depth, standardized test that has been majorly disrupted because of COVID. So there are some waivers at the state level, but we're not seeing a lot of those waivers federally for praxis. So I know that we have some praxis study groups right now, and I don't at all want teachers listening, people listening to think that we don't have certified staff. We don't have staff certified in certain areas. So when you think about CTE courses, really specific science praxis makes me break out into hives because it's not a generic science. So Dr. Edwards may have had a chemistry, whereas I may have biology, Maria may have ecology. So the praxis and certifications are really, really complicated. I don't want you to think that we want you to rubber stamp this, but the changes here came out of a thoughtful series of meetings, hours upon hours.
We understand, Dr. Jordan. Dr. Gupta?
I just want to make sure this is not a spin. I mean, I don't want to second guess Dr. Jordan. I think she has done her homework, and what you're presenting is with due diligence, so I'm ready to vote.
All right, if there's no further discussion, Mr. Harvey, everybody's opinions have been heard. We're going to vote on the motion and determine whether it will be voted up or down and proceed accordingly. All those in favor of the motion?
I went to the bathroom. Can you just say
Yes,
what the motion was?
we're going to have the maker of the motion repeat her motion, please.
For the fourth time.
Sorry. I didn't hear any of them, so.
I move that we approve the high school program of studies for the 21-22 school year with the exception of the course weight part of this thing.
Being taken out.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison.
I said it
Ms. Day.
4 different ways.
Thank you, Ms. Day. Thank you for helping me to make sure that we have this accurate. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Harvey stated, so that's 8-1. The motion passes, and we certainly have corrective work, et cetera, to do. Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Thank you, Dr. Edwards. That now moves us to the next item on our agenda, which is item I-1, instruction and program policy updates. Dr. Edwards?
Okay, and now we have a new team. I just love when they float in. Director Brown and Director Bassett.
Good afternoon, Board. Today we are here to give you an update from our instructional policy group meeting. We met on November the 20th, and we discussed 4 policies, and we're bringing 3 to you today. The first policy is JZ, performance by students. This was a policy that was up for review, and we deleted a sentence under B, political rallies, and we deleted that statement because any field trip that any of our band or other students make within the division has an approval process through central office. And we felt that this one has a political tone, and any political tone would go before the superintendent. And so we deleted that sentence for that policy. Policy JF-CZ, personal electronic communication devices. This policy was also up for review, and we made one minor edit. We updated our language in a sentence. We would say, example, electronic communication devices, e.g. a cell phone. And we've updated that language to, i.e. being devices with cellular services, e.g. cell phone, watches, etc. Okay? So that was just a simple language change because technology is changing and we wanted to be up to date with the verbiage. The last one is policy IKA, parental assistance with instruction. This is a VSB policy that LCS is adopting for the first time. Please note that this is not a Title I policy for clarification. This is a policy that's based upon the Code of Virginia Chapter for Standards of Quality. It gives guidance to encourage parents to provide instructional assistance to their children in their home, which may include voluntary training for the parents of children in grades kindergarten through 3. So this came from a code, and as the school board, we're also giving guidance to parents to encourage them to contact their schools to reach out for assistance. And that assistance can be through at the Reeves office for parental contact and parental engagement, and then also reaching out to each of the schools, working with their teachers or working with the instructional team here for resources, supplemental materials, and any other needs or resources that that parent might need to assist his or her child, but helping them to be an advocate for their own child. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you, Ms. Brown. Ms. Evans?
I think I may have had one of these off when I sent this out, but just to clarify, because Dr. Brennan sent me an email about this, and I think it made sense. This new one was not sent out because of COVID. So they weren't saying because we're in this time, parents need to learn how to, that's not what this was. So we didn't want anybody to have that idea. Now, I did have written down that it was a federal requirement for Title I schools to have this policy. Is that not correct?
This came from under the code and is in conjunction with the Title I policy.
Okay.
And it follows it aligns with that Title I policy for parental engagement.
Okay.
And so that also leads into our parental engagement and equity office also in the programming that they're doing.
Okay. And it's basically just encouraging parents, not requiring anything of parents. It is encouraging them, not a requirement.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Brennan?
I'd like to thank Ms. Brown for her work and Ms. Evans for giving us a heads up, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve these policies.
My records state.
Just for discussion.
But they're really
Discussion
for
tonight.
action. That was my question. They're really for action, aren't they?
I thought they were.
I did too.
They're for,
Yeah.
All right.
Is this the first?
It's the first reading.
Okay.
I'm just going by what I have.
Okay.
Yeah, you just met on November 20th, so this is the first reading,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Yes.
Can I adjust my statement then?
Yes.
Can I adjust it?
Yes.
Can I suggest that we put this in the consent
Yes.
agenda for the
Yes.
next meeting?
Yes.
And always remember, anybody can pull it between now and then, but that's fair enough if there's no objection at this time. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Thank you, Belle, Sharon, whomever works with that. Thank you so much.
thank you.
All right, we will now move to I-2, Capital Improvements Plan Roofing Projects. Dr. Edwards?
Yep, and in walks Mr. Gatsky to talk about some
Put him at
roof
the beginning of the
bid
meeting sometime.
tabulation.
This is for action tonight, Board.
Well, good evening. I'll try to be as brief as possible. And as far as brevity goes, this was actually 4 different roofing projects that we put into one agenda item. These would be projects that we would start on in the spring and go into the summer. We have Paul Monroe Elementary, all the EPDM, all the flat roof plus the shingle roof over the cafeteria. The alternate was to upgrade the shingle roof to a metal roof to match the addition that's in the back. So to kind of tie that all together. Lincoln Elementary is different sections of the roof. The total roof has been replaced in sections over the years. These sections are due up for replacement. Sheffield Elementary is just the 2001 edition. Again, it's 20 years now and time for replacement. The alternate there, which we rejected, was to repaint the metal roof over the front entrance portico. Actually, with the fact that these numbers came in so much below budget, we are going to try to actually replace that roof rather than repaint it. We repainted it every few years and it keeps peeling. We'd like to get a new roof on there that would last a little bit longer than a couple years. And then Dunbar Middle School, the base bid originally was the low roof that's over the Career Tech area, if you're familiar with that building, the west building. What we would, again, because pricing came in so favorable, We threw in an alternate to replace the roof on the 12th Street section, the section of the west building that faces right on 12th Street. So I could go through all these individually with the budgets and all that, but the bottom line is that we had $1,670,000 budgeted for construction on these 4 projects. The 4 projects came in at a total of $1,264,162. So we were about $400,000 under budget. And we are seeking action this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Gasky. Is there any discussion, or the chair is certainly open to entertaining a motion to Dr. Nilles?
Can you comment on the quality of the bids or estimates, quotes you received for Dunbar Middle School? There's quite a spread.
It was quite a spread, and we were not surprised with the spread, and we were not surprised with the low pricing, because that is reflective of what we've been getting lately. Mountain Roofing, which was the successful bidder on that, we were not familiar with them. We have used them, or they have bid on other projects, but we did check them out, and they seem to be a very reputable company. And the city also checked the references and everything, so we were satisfied that they would do a good job for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nilles. Any other questions? Yeah. One who's willing to advance a motion at this time?
Move to approve the capital improvement plan roofing projects.
Second.
All right, we're going to, were you going to second that, Mr. Harvey?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dr. Nilles made the motion to approve the capital improvement plan roofing projects as stated. It's seconded by Mr. Harvey. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. And thank you, Mr. Gasky, for your presentation and the questions on that. That now moves us to item J, superintendent's comments.
Ooh, yes. Okay. First, I'd just like to give a huge thank you to Chief Wormser and the Lynchburg Fire Department for their absolutely fast, quick service on the day after Thanksgiving when we had the fire at Paul Monroe. It could have been a lot worse had they not been there as quick as they were and put that fire out like that. So I am so grateful to them for their service and for working with us. So kudos to them. And then follow up, Steve and Don and Shirley and Lulu and our cleanup team that has been there working diligently to get the school back in order, back in pristine order. So, and we have a couple contracted companies that are working with us to do some duct work and get into the ceiling tiles and just remove soot, because that smoke left soot. So we want to make sure that the school is back to where it was, if not better. And I'm grateful for the folks who were quick to respond and continue to help us as we continue our cleanup efforts. The MOU for the SRO and LPD agreement that we have, I just want to thank everybody who sent in comments, including our 2 student reps who are just absolutely awesome. When I grow up, I want to be them because they're just very well spoken and have some great ideas for things. So I did get the last of the comments from the Equity Task Force. So we're putting all that together, and then we'll give you all a clean copy to just look at and give one to the chief for review before we sign the agreement. So just very grateful for that. Next week is Computer Science Week. How fitting after we had all this conversation about technology and CTE. So just a shout out to everyone working in that field and incorporating that field in other fields too as we do that. And just thank you to everyone who helped celebrate our families for Thanksgiving and give out food. We had a beautiful day. I was prepared to be cold, but it was a great day. And special thank you to my partner, who was the vice mayor, Bo Wright, who, when I got there, he trained me up quickly on what to do, how to fill out the forms, get this going, because it was on and popping at Heritage High School when we were delivering food or serving food. So it's always a wonderful opportunity just to talk with people and just put a smile on somebody's face. So I appreciate that of my staff. And to my staff, I'm so proud of everybody who did their homework, because I didn't get a lot of email and I didn't send a lot of emails. So I'm grateful that staff actually took time to rest and enjoy family and friends, and we're back at it again. So thank you to that staff, and just thank you to the board for your support. I know these are long meetings, and you know my team has a lot to say and share, but they want to make sure that you're informed, and they appreciate your support. So
Very powerful, very needed tonight. Thank you so much, Dr. Edwards. Board comments, we'll start with Belle Evans.
I mean, I think I said everything I needed to during the meeting. I will quickly say that just the LACR committee will not meet until January. Just putting that out there again, so it'll be January 5th.
that's fine. We're going to meet. You won't meet again until February. Finance stole your date on January.
Oh, I thought you said we were meeting with them.
No, and instead of them, we were switching.
That was kind of confusing.
Gotcha. Okay. So we will meet in February. Okay. That's perfect. Then I can have the Capitol Conference do that, and then, okay, great. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Morrison.
I'm good.
Dr. Carter.
Just attended the VSBA, the Virginia School Board Association's virtual conference, and there were a lot of excellent topics to take part in. And the beauty of it being in a virtual, you can continue to look and read those now. Well, one was about, we talked about the collective bargaining. Another one about the importance of the media department and how they really need now to be the best. And not only just post things, but look at the data according to when they're posting, to look at what the trends of when people are asking questions, and to really have just a stellar media department so that you can address and keep abreast of everything and also tell your story. And also the one regarding the Chesterfield budget, where they have 5 new board members. All of the board members are new and they're dealing with this, but that was an excellent presentation about how to really take your budget and to tell your story also when you're doing that. Like they're the #1 employer in their agency, in their city, and I think we're at least the 3rd or 4th in our city. So those things are awesome. And I took part with Dunbar Middle School to assist with the nutrition for the Thanksgiving dinners. And our nutrition program, I just love the way they package things, because how things look really make a difference. And it's really so neat and tidy and really effective. And worked with, my contact was Mrs. Tina Lane, and I worked directly with Mrs. Saber Jones. And they had everything, they knew exactly how many. And then we had a rush from people from EC Glass and Lincoln that were referred to us. And so we did, I don't know how many, over 64 within an hour, and probably could have done way more than that. And just the way that the staff, they didn't complain, they just went in there and found, gave more different, the same meal but in different packaging, but they really did an excellent job. And also just to thank the student reps, they are awesome. And we can talk about a lot of different things, but when you hear from the students who are actually in the schools and how they feel, I think that is just tremendous, and just thank them for that. That's all.
Thank you. Dr. Brennan?
Just a short, quick shout out. I visited several weeks ago the Empowerment Academy with Ms. Casey Crabb, who was so enthusiastic, and I told her I would bring this back to the board so we would not forget about the Empowerment Academy. But they continue to have an enrollment that's between about 32 and 46 students with a waiting list. Last year's, they've had a total of 49 graduates, and they had 17 graduates in 2019, 2020, which was pretty awesome. And they're continuing to provide their services despite all the COVID environment. So I just wanted to recognize the Empowerment Academy and their staff for the job they're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Dr. Nilles?
No comments.
No problem. Dr. Sinner?
Nothing, thanks.
Dr. Gupta?
I will not say anything. I wanted to be head of a utility company, but I'll let it go for now.
Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Harvey?
I just also want to give a shout out to the people at Sandusky Middle with the Thanksgiving food program. The nutrition staff there was incredible. I was greeted. It's like Dr. Carter said, I mean, the worst thing to do is go volunteer to serve lunch at lunch when you're hungry, and the presentation of the food was just so incredible. I mean, it was really, really awesome. Got to spend the day with Sheriff Sloan and some members of his department, also some volunteers from Parkview Missions. So I want to thank the community for getting involved in their schools and participating in their programs. It's kind of one of those great things where the community is helping to reach out to the community. Also want to share just an observation regarding the Virginia School Board Association and passing of the volunteer policy. It was reported earlier, I believe it was 76%.
That is correct.
And that number, in just some of the different chat groups that I was in with representatives, some members voted not in favor of it simply because they wanted to take it back to their boards for further discussion. They said that they probably would have still voted, they ultimately would have voted in favor of it, but it was more of a procedural thing. So I think that's kind of encouraging, and it's sort of a shout out to Dr. Carter for the way she presented that in such a clear way that folks across the Commonwealth thought so favorably of our policy. And I thank Dr. Edwards for sharing, making sure that I had the updated information, because I've been sharing our matrix with different individuals across the state who have come to me through that chat group and shared with them how we're trying to implement that policy. So we're on the leading edge and setting a high standard that others are following. So thank you, Dr. Carter.
Thank you so much. Also, thank you, Mr. Harvey, for being in the trenches and helping in that way. That everything helps, and it's just such a great statement for this board regarding that. Well, I reduced my comments to writing for my board comments, so I would ask you to please read those, and I will leave it at that. I do look forward to getting comments ongoingly from each of you after every board meeting, just to get a feel for meeting flow, suggestions, group dynamics. We'll be putting a system in place for that to occur. Thank you so very much. And now we will move to item L, which is our informational items. It is so noted that the Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations Committee meeting is scheduled for February now, and that will be so noted. Our work session is going to be Tuesday, December the 15th, and our next school board meeting will be held Tuesday, January the 12th, 2001, and we will govern ourselves accordingly. We'll now move to item M, closed meeting notification. The school board chair recommends that the school board approve a motion to convene a closed meeting to discuss the following as permitted by the Virginia Code, Section 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A1. The school board needs to convene a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing the following specific matters: the superintendent's evaluation contract. Is there a motion to go into closed meeting?
I move that we go into closed meeting.
All right, been moved by Dr. Carter.
A second.
Seconded by Dr. Nilles. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries, and we will take a few minutes, 5 minutes break to get ourselves organized. You can get your meals, and